The story begins with a theatrical display, mourning the beautiful yet pitiful Serafina.
A hand encased in a black lace glove retrieves a small, ragged puppet.
The green-haired woman in a red lace gown poses with her puppets.
Serafina Lopez smiles sweetly as she holds the figures that represent her friends.
An unseen voice questions if Serafina has finished her performance with the stage puppets. The black left hand lifts the green and black-haired dolls into delight.
Serafina is told to bid farewell to her attachment dolls before a hand crushes one.
The black-haired woman vows to dismantle the hypocritical puppet show for everyone to see. A magnificent chandelier illuminates the bustling ballroom as the evening's festivities commence.
A guest delicately lifts a glass of red wine from a table of treats. A woman in yellow observes that Lady Lopez is as popular and inaccessible as ever.
Guests notice that Serafina's usual companion is conspicuously absent from her side this evening.
They recall Lady Ancy, who served as a shabby errand runner for the popular girl.
The attendees continue to whisper, wondering where the servant-like companion has gone today.
Her arrival is heralded by a sharp, rhythmic click, sounding as a stunning black-haired woman glides past.
The noblewomen are captivated by the newcomer's elegance, unaware of her true identity.
The mysterious woman moves through the crowd, her dark hair adorned with a silver ornament.
Lori reflects on the degrading nickname Serafina forced upon her in high society.
She remembers being treated as a mere footwipe, forced to serve Serafina's every whim.
A soft, persistent whisper rises as Lori ignores the crowd, focused on her own transformation. Serafina, the green-haired socialite, sits comfortably while being doted on by several noblemen.
The men clamor for her attention, each begging for the honor of a dance.
Serafina reacts with practiced modesty as the men continue to vie for her favor.
She basks in the attention, looking every bit the celebrated beauty of the ball.
A narrative note confirms that Serafina remains as beloved by society as she always was.
She is widely considered the most beautiful woman currently reigning over high society.
Larry approaches the group, politely interrupting the men to announce her presence to Serafina.
Serafina's eyes go wide with shock as she recognizes Lori in her stunning new attire. Lori stands tall in her white gown, meeting her former friend's gaze with calm confidence.
A wave of disbelief sweeps the room as guests realize this gorgeous woman is Lady Ancy.
Noblewomen identify her dress as a luxury designer piece, paired with high-end hair ornaments.
Jealousy flares as they realize Laura's outfit outshines anything Serafina possesses, making Serafina grit her teeth. Serafina tries to regain control, condescendingly mentioning the effort Lori put into her appearance.
She subtly insults Lori, claiming the extravagant jewels and dress simply do not suit her.
Serafina continues her verbal assault, calling Lara's facial features too plain for such finery.
She expresses mock pity over the fortune spent on an outfit she deems a failure.
Serafina offers to pick a more appropriate dress next time, feigning the concern of a best friend.
In the shadows, Serafina whispers that she is the only one who truly knows Lori.
A blonde woman with a blue fan interrupts, challenging Serafina's arrogant and insulting claims.
The surrounding noblemen gasp in shock as the newcomer makes her bold entrance.
The blonde woman reveals that she was actually the one who personally selected Laura's dress.
She is introduced as Evangeline Claudius, the most splendid and powerful rose in the empire.
Her movement is punctuated by a quick, sharp snap sounding as the ducal daughter asserts her authority.
Evangeline stands protectively over Lori, her cold gaze fixed squarely on a startled Serafina.
The crowd is paralyzed by the sudden arrival of the high-ranking ducal daughter.
Serafina's face is turning so red with embarrassment, she might actually match the carpet soon.
Evangeline smiles enigmatically, clearly enjoying the chaos her presence and endorsement have caused.
The blonde duchess places a hand on Lori, publicly cementing their alliance before the entire ballroom.
Serafina is left reeling, unable to believe that Lori is using her informal nickname with royalty.
Evangeline accuses Serafina of insulting her own refined taste by belittling Laris's attire and leaves her speechless. Evangeline asserts that it is only natural for Lori to be more beautiful than her former friend.
She turns her intense gaze toward the crowd, challenging them to find any reason to disagree.
The noblemen in the ballroom are visibly shaken, sweating under the Duchess's formidable and scrutinizing presence.
One nobleman quickly and nervously confirms his agreement, acknowledging Laris's unexpected and stunning beauty.
Another nobleman praises Lori as the most noteworthy lady at the ball, while Serafina watches with growing irritation.
Serafina is visibly upset, her thoughts filled with bitter disbelief over Laura's sudden and successful transformation.
She breaks into a fit of dramatic, practiced tears, covering her face to regain the room's sympathy.
Evangeline remains unmoved, identifying Serafina's cowardly tactic of targeting Lori because she lacks the rank to challenge the Duchess.
The Duchess stands tall and proud, her elegant blue gown making a bold statement next to Lara's radiant attire.
Evangeline decides they have seen enough and departs, with Lori following her while respectfully addressing her as Lady Claudius.
Serafina is left alone in the shadows, her silence speaking volumes of her shock and social defeat. Her mask of innocence falls away, revealing a cold and sinister expression as she watches her former pawn leave.
The scene shifts to a serene garden conservatory, illuminated by a bright and peaceful morning sky.
Lori follows Evangeline through the greenery, marveling at the Duchess's effortless and commanding presence.
Evangeline stops and commands Lori to pay close attention to what she's about to say. She begins to explain her motivations, though her back remains turned to the dark-haired girl.
The Duchess bluntly admits she only intervened because having a shabby companion would reflect poorly on her own taste.
Lori reacts with a soft, amused smile, finding the Duchess's prideful yet protective reasoning quite charming.
A narrative note suggests that the woman who was formerly Lori is now truly becoming a villainess. A sharp, rhythmic click sounding as the scene shifts to the hem of a gown moving across the grass.
Lori and Evangeline share a moment of connection, with Lori thinking that this turn of events is absolutely perfect.
The story moves to a sun-drenched tea party held in a grand pillar-lined estate garden. A woman in a brown dress observes the festivities, her thoughts drifting back to a pivotal moment of transition. She reflects on her new reality, deciding to drop her old identity after realizing she has successfully possessed this body. The protagonist reflects on the absurdity of her possession, still coming to terms with the reality of this world. She is startled as someone approaches and asks if Serafina is feeling all right. A man brings a stack of cushions to the dark-haired woman, while Serafina sits nearby in an ornate gown. The man, Gregor, asks if Serafina's back is hurting, but she gracefully declines his help with a sweet smile.
Serafina maintains her image of perfection, smiling softly as Gregor dotes on her every move.
The dark-haired protagonist watches silently, burdened by the heavy pile of cushions she was forced to carry.
She recalls that they were childhood friends, realizing how deeply their lives have been intertwined.
A lingering doubt enters her mind as she observes the unequal dynamic between Serafina and the others.
Gregor laughs while the protagonist suspects that he was the one who forced her into this subservient role. Serafina drinks her tea, reminiscing about the many outings the three of them used to take as children.
A sudden clatter sounding as Serafina brings up the time Lori fell into the water years ago.
Gregor tells Lori she should be more grateful, reminding her that Serafina was scarred while supposedly saving her life.
The protagonist's skeptical reflection stares back from her tea, questioning the truth of that old childhood story. A sudden realization strikes her as she begins to piece together the fragments of a forgotten memory. A vivid memory resurfaces, showing the terrifying day Lori fell into the pond as a young child. The young Lori struggles beneath the water's surface, desperately reaching for a way to stay afloat.
Instead of a helping hand, Serafina uses a long stick to poke and push the drowning girl deeper.
Despite the betrayal, the young girl manages to grasp the muddy bank and pull herself toward safety. Lori collapses on the grass, gasping for breath and coughing up water after her near-death experience. A young Serafina stands over her with a chilling smile, mockingly telling her she should have been more careful. Back in the present, Serafina continues to drink her tea with the same deceptive and elegant smile. The protagonist finally understands that Laris's submissiveness was born from years of this calculated and forced trauma. A sharp clink sounding as Serafina reacts with mock surprise to a sudden disturbance during tea. The dark-haired woman is momentarily paralyzed by the weight of this horrifying and revealed truth. She remembers the childhood Serafina grabbing her hands, feigning a bond of deep and exclusive friendship. The memory concludes with Serafina embracing her, claiming to be the only friend Larry has in the world.
Lariat identifies Serafina as the one who caused her past drowning and initiates her plan by spilling tea.
Serafina, with her long green hair, looks down in practiced distress over the minor tea spill.
Serafina demands that Lariat clean her dress and tie her shoelaces while Lariat questions her own past tolerance.
Holding a heavy stack of cushions, the black-haired Laureate wonders why she ever put up with such treatment. Gregor helps Serafina while harshly ordering Lariat to stop standing around and assist her friend immediately.
Noble women whisper that Lariat is acting like a maid just to maintain her proximity to the popular Serafina.
Lariat hears the gossip and reflects on her high status as she kneels to serve the manipulative girl. She feels a deep sense of frustration as her body moves with the submissiveness forced upon it for years.
The narrative notes that Laureate's presence is intentionally used to make Serafina appear more beautiful by comparison.
A woman hiding behind a fan remarks that Serafina's beauty is heightened whenever Lariat is by her side.
Lauriette's hand grips the fabric of her dress as she reaches a breaking point with the constant insults.
She acknowledges that society views her as a puppet whose strings are being pulled by the green-haired socialite.
A sharp, rhythmic click sounding as Lauriette's intense pink eyes flare with a newfound and dangerous resolve.
A sudden, powerful whoosh sounding as Lariette activates her awakening booster to finally strike back against her tormentor.
The surrounding guests are frozen in shock as the social dynamic of the ballroom shifts in an instant.
Lariette violently upends the furniture, sending Seraphina and her tea crashing to the floor in total disarray.
Seraphina's face turns bright red with embarrassment as she finds herself the center of public ridicule.
A loud, echoing bang sounding as a furious Gregor slams the ground and demands to know if Lariette is insane.
Lauriette looks at her trembling hand, realizing the true extent of the power she now possesses. A soft, steady exhale sounding as Lauriette clenches her fist, ready to fully embrace her new path.
A glowing book titled Lovely Seraphina reveals the original plot where the green-haired girl was the hero.
The story begins with Seraphina living as a humble and supposedly innocent girl in a small village.
She is depicted performing acts of charity, though the narrative now suggests her kindness was entirely performative.
Shadows of Lariette and Gregor watch as Seraphina is celebrated as the undisputed center of high society.
The novel labels Evangeline Claudius as a wicked villainess who supposedly targeted the innocent Seraphina out of jealousy.
The childhood puppet Lariette once was is shown broken and discarded in the wake of Seraphina's rise.
The book concludes with the claim that Seraphina found true love and lived happily ever after. Lariette reflects on her previous role as a faceless background character used only to support Seraphina's story. She stares into the distance, her pink eyes glowing as she rejects the fate written in the novel.
Gregor frantically checks on the fallen Seraphina, offering to call a doctor for her minor stumble.
The narrative reveals that Seraphina, the protagonist, is actually a malicious manipulator hidden behind a sweet mask.
A sharp, angry burst sounding as Gregor yells for an apology while Seraphina feigns a forgiving nature.
Guests whisper that Seraphina stole Gregor away from Lariette, as he was originally Lady Ency's fiancé.
A shaky, unstable wobble sounding as Seraphina touches her head, pretending to suffer from a sudden dizzy spell.
A heavy, muffled thud sounding as she leans against Gregor, claiming her mysterious illness has returned.
The soft, piteous whimper sounding as Seraphina begs to lean on Gregor, claiming she is about to cry.
A rapid, rhythmic heartbeat sounding as Gregor blushes intensely, falling deeper for Seraphina's practiced and dramatic act.
A sudden, firm thud sounding as Gregor demands Lariette apologize for endangering such a frail and delicate person.
Lariette remains unmoved, telling Gregor to help the girl up first before she even considers apologizing.
Seraphina glares in disbelief, unable to understand why Lariette is no longer submissive or fearful.
Lariette stands tall over the two of them, her presence commanding and cold in the bright garden.
Countess Johansson, the party host, arrives and politely suggests they move the scene to a private lounge.
A sharp, frustrated snap sounding as Gregor rudely dismisses the host's hospitality as being insufficient.
He continues his dramatic display, insisting that Seraphina is so fragile that even a small shock is dangerous.
A shocked intake of breath sounding as the Countess and a chibi-style Lariette react to Gregor's extreme rudeness. Gregor's hysterical shouting echoes across the garden, making the entire situation increasingly awkward for the other guests. The narrative notes that there are dozens of actual servants nearby, making Lariette's manual labor completely unnecessary.
A dull, rhythmic throb sounding as Lariette rebukes Gregor for insulting the hostess and for exaggerating Seraphina's injuries. Lariette reflects on how the rumor of an injury would bring public disgrace to the Countess's reputation. The Countess looks on with growing concern, realizing that Seraphina's drama is actively harming her social standing.
A firm, authoritative voice declares that such a thing cannot be permitted.
Lariette bows to Countess Johansson, apologizing for the scene and the concern it caused.
Gregor scoffs at the absurdity of Seraphina falling while someone was supposedly checking her shoes.
Lariette remains composed, preparing her response with a calm and measured expression. She explains that she found it strange since the shoelaces were perfectly fine. A sharp, startled gasp sounding as Seraphina reacts in shock to Lariette's pointed observations.
Lariette mockingly apologizes, suggesting Seraphina's slender frame must have caused her to fall so easily.
She maintains a serene and knowing smile as she looks down at the fallen girl.
Lariette reaches out a hand as if to offer help, commanding the scene's attention.
The Countess questions if Seraphina intentionally made Lariette kneel, sending the green-haired girl into a panic.
Guests whisper in disbelief, suspecting that Seraphina's own instability led to the awkward situation.
Countess Johansson ends the drama, ordering everyone to stand and the guests to be escorted away.
A final polite dismissal follows as the Countess wishes Serafina a pleasant continuation of her day.
A sudden elegant swish sounding as the hostess turns and walks away from the messy encounter.
Lariat relishes the moment, noting that Serafina is finally learning the bitter taste of being ignored. Serafina calls out in desperation, but Lariat stands tall and triumphant in the bright garden.
Time passes and the scene shifts to the bright exterior of the on-sea Viscount's townhouse.
Inside, Lariat casually orders her maid to burn the relentless letters from Serafina and Gregor.
She sits at her desk, unfazed by the social pressure her former friends are trying to apply.
Lariat hums to herself, her pink eyes reflecting a cold and focused determination.
A soft, quick tap sounding as she touches a document, certain of her next move.
A sudden heavy thud sounding as the reality of a letter of broken engagement is revealed. A firm rhythmic press sounding as she carefully applies a red wax seal to the final envelope. Lariat holds the completed letter up, looking satisfied with her plan to sever ties once and for all. She recalls how Gregor once doted on Serafina while treating her like a mere servant.
She reflects on Gregor's status as a second son who has no hope of inheriting a title.
Lariat realizes his proposal was purely transactional, aimed at gaining the status and lands of her family.
Resting on her bed, she stares at the letter that will finally end their manipulative relationship.
A sharp metallic click sounding as she prepares to send the document for the peace of her family. A sudden, quick tap sounding at her door, catching Lariat's attention just as she was finishing. A loud, echoing bang sounding as a furious Gregor storms into her private room without permission.
Lariat looks up in shock as Gregor stands before her, trembling with suppressed rage.
Behind him, a flustered maid tries to explain that she couldn't stop his sudden and rude intrusion.
A smooth, dismissive wave sounding as Lariat calmly tells her maid to leave them alone. A soft, steady creak sounding as the door is closed, leaving the former couple in tense silence.
Lariat rubs her temple, visibly exhausted by Gregor's constant and dramatic outbursts.
She looks him in the eye, asking why he would barge into her room in such a manner.
Gregor yells at her, accusing her of being insane for ignoring his letters and social summons.
Lariat counters by questioning his own sanity for storming in, claiming she was simply too sick to reply. Gregor demands to know if she cares about the trouble she caused by leaving the picnic so abruptly. A sudden rhythmic cough sounding as Lariat pretends to be ill when he demands a public apology.
She mockingly asks him to repeat himself, feigning that her sickness prevented her from hearing his demands.
Gregor stands frozen in disbelief, unable to comprehend her total lack of submission or fear.
Lariat turns away, stating that dealing with his constant nonsense is an utter waste of her energy. She sits down and holds her sealed letter, asking if he shouldn't be the one seeking forgiveness.
Lariat expresses her deep disappointment in his lack of manners, while he arrogantly claims fiancé's privileges.
She confronts him about his history of putting Serafina first and sending harassment under the guise of concern.
Gregor continues to insult her character, threatening to withdraw his leniency and end their engagement. A sharp, focused glint appearing as Lariat holds up the very letter he was unknowingly asking for.
With a radiant and chilling smile, Lariat happily agrees to grant his wish and break their bond.
Brown-haired Gregor is stunned as Lariat ends their engagement, citing his neglect of her health while he catered to his best friend.
A sharp, firm tap sounding as Lariat gestures for the exit, demanding that the flustered Gregor leave her presence immediately.
Lariat calls for her staff, Amy and Hans, to ensure their unwanted guest is escorted out properly.
A loud, echoing boom sounding as the imposing Hans and the maid Amy arrive, ready to follow their lady's orders.
The massive butler looms over a cowering Gregor who nervously claims he only leaves because Lariat is unwell.
A frantic, rhythmic shuffle sounding as the servants usher Gregor away while he yells that their conversation isn't over.
Lariat waves a mockingly polite goodbye, comparing the struggling Gregor to a nuisance being hauled away by guards.
A soft, steady exhale sounding as Lariat finally finds a moment of peace after sending the aggressive intruder away.
Lariat reflects on the unfairness of being harassed simply for upsetting the world's chosen protagonist.
A heavy, muffled thud sounding as Lariat collapses into a chair, lamenting the exhaustion of living as a supporting character.
She gazes into her wine, questioning if breaking her engagement is enough to truly change her predetermined fate.
Lariat contemplates the original story where the green-haired Serafina is left unconditionally by everyone as a default setting.
She looks at her hands, visualizing the red strings of fate that bind her to the protagonist's narrative snare.
Lost in thought, Lariat wonders how she can possibly cut herself free from this forced secondary role.
The narrative introduces Evangeline Claudius, the blonde villainess who was destined to suffer for opposing the innocent Serafina.
The story shifts to mention the male lead and his sister's brother, the powerful Duke Claudius.
Duke Claudius is shown dancing with Serafina, having been manipulated into the girl's orbit while trying to control his sister.
Lariat notes that in this current timeline, Serafina and the blonde villainess have not yet made official contact.
The narrative warns that Serafina will soon begin her campaign of malicious rumors to destroy Evangeline's reputation.
A sudden, sharp intake of breath sounding as Lariat is struck by a shocking revelation about the plot.
Lariat begins rage drinking in a chibi-style display, realizing that Serafina is the true instigator and real villain.
She decides that it's time for the heroine to get a taste of her own medicine for once. A sudden, brilliant glint sounding as Lariat's pink eyes glow with the spark of a new, revolutionary plan.
Lariat considers the potential of forming an alliance with the blonde Lady Claudius, who shares her precarious situation.
She envisions the two of them standing together as allies, ready to challenge the clichés that torment them.
Lariat hopes that joining forces will finally allow them to break free from the narrative's oppressive tropes.
A soft, mischievous chuckle sounding as Lariat reveals a satisfied smile, confident in her newfound resolve. A sudden, energetic spring sounding as she leaps to her feet, declaring she has come up with an amazing idea.
The next morning arrives, casting bright sunlight over the tall towers of the aristocratic townhouse.
Inside another estate, a blonde woman sits at her desk, quietly reading a letter she just received.
A subtle, knowing smile touches the blonde woman's lips as she processes the surprising contents of the message. Duke Claudius enters the room, curiously asking his sister why she is smiling so much over a letter. The blonde Evangeline Claudius looks radiant and composed, her blue eyes sparkling as she enjoys a cup of tea.
Sunlight streams through the large windows of the Viscounty, signaling the start of a busy and decisive day.
Back in her own room, a disheveled Lariat sits up in bed, looking absolutely exhausted and regretful. A soft, piteous groan sounding as Lariat asks her maid Amy to confirm the embarrassing events of the previous evening. A bright, sparkly flashback shows a drunken Lariat gleefully preparing an urgent letter for the blonde Lady Claudius.
Amy is shown in a chibi state, her face pale with shock as she recalls her mistress's wild behavior.
Lariat panics, realizing she was so intoxicated that she doesn't even remember the words she wrote in her letter.
A long, weary sigh sounding as she regrets sending the document while drunk and wishes for a regression system.
A soft, rhythmic tap sounding at the door as Amy and another maid announce the arrival of an unexpected guest.
Lariat asks who would visit so early, only to hear that the green-haired girl, Lady Lopez, has arrived.
Lariat's expression hardens into a cold and suspicious glare at the mention of her former friend's name. A sharp, rustling swish sounding as Lariat prepares to face the girl who has manipulated her for so long.
She adjusts her dark hair with a graceful motion, hiding her hangover behind a mask of cold, aristocratic poise.
A sudden, loud bang sounding as Serafina bursts into the room, calling out to her dear friend with false warmth.
A soft, concerned murmur sounding as the green-haired girl rushes to Lariat's side, feigning worry over her recent illness.
A graceful, smooth movement sounding as Lariat accepts the help, offering a fake smile while thanking the girl for her worry.
Serafina notes how unusual it is to be invited into this room, while Lariat silently critiques the girl's blatant hypocrisy.
Lariat reflects on how she was never truly treated as an equal, having always felt more like a servant than a guest.
Lariat offers a fake apology, asking if the green-haired Serafina felt the same way about their friendship.
Serafina remains completely silent, her expression unreadable as she processes Lariat's unexpected and biting words.
The green-haired Serafina softly calls Lariat's name, her calculated movements carrying a hidden and unsettling weight.
Serafina suggests it would have been nice if Lariat had spoken up about her feelings much earlier.
The green-haired girl grips Lariat's shoulders, claiming she had no idea Lariat had been thinking like that. A cold reflection of the green-haired girl stares back from Lariat's pink eye during the tense moment.
Lariat clenches her skirt, noting that her body is trembling uncontrollably from Serafina's intense and heavy intimidation. Lariat looks up at Serafina, who towers over her with an imposing and shadowy presence in the room.
A sudden, sharp shiver sounding as Lariat vows to overcome the fear Serafina's manipulative words instill. Serafina continues to hold Lariat's arms firmly, while Lariat keeps her gaze fixed nervously on the floor. A loud, echoing bang sounding as Amy bursts into the room, excitedly waving a sealed letter in her hand.
Amy frantically announces that a reply has come, while the shocked Lariat asks what is happening.
Lariat stares in wide-eyed shock, her expression frozen as she processes the news of the unexpected response.
A soft, quick tap sounding as Lariat looks down, breathlessly asking if the news about the letter is real.
Amy confirms the ducal house sent a carriage, while Lariat decides they must start getting ready immediately.
Serafina's expression twists into a mask of pure, jealous confusion as she questions the mention of Lady Claudius.
Lariat holds the letter, realizing it is an invitation from the lady, while Serafina expresses shock and confusion.
Serafina tells Lariat not to mess around, claiming Lariat wouldn't get an invitation she didn't also receive. Lariat points out that the maid just clearly used the word reply to her own message.
Serafina demands to know what Lariat sent to get an invitation, reacting with a frantic and desperate intensity.
A sharp, rhythmic tap sounding as Lariat holds the letter, questioning if demanding her private life is too much. Lariat firmly asks Serafina to leave, stating she needs to prepare to meet with the lady right now. A sudden rustling swish sounding as the two girls turn away from each other in cold silence.
Serafina asks what in disbelief as Lariat tells Amy to see their unwanted guest out properly.
Serafina asks if Lariat's illness is affecting her brain, claiming she is seriously worried about her health.
Lariat coolly retorts that perhaps her head is clearer now than it has ever been in her life. Amy politely offers to escort Lady Lopez to her carriage as the girl remains silently and visibly fuming.
A soft, steady exhale sounding as Lariat realizes she actually managed to chase the protagonist away.
Lariat clutches the precious letter with a joyful blush, letting out a laugh at her successful small victory.
A carriage arrives at the grand estate, and a voice welcomes Lady Ansi to come inside. Lariat admires her reflection, hoping the lady invited her because she was truly impressed by the letter.
A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Lariat enters the room, praying she isn't seen as a weirdo.
Lariat walks forward nervously, wearing a white floral dress with gold accents and a green ribbon headband.
Lariat is struck speechless as she gazes at the woman waiting for her in the bright, sunlit room.
A tall, blonde woman stands with her back turned, looking out the window at the grand white castle.
The blonde Lady Claudius turns around, surrounded by red flowers and glowing in the bright morning sunlight.
Lariat's pink eyes widen in awe as she lets out a soft, stunned sound at the woman's beauty.
Lariat reflects that despite reading many novels, she has never felt her heart race for a character before.
A close-up of the blonde woman's face shows her looking down with a calm and regally imposing expression.
Evangeline asks if she is Lady Ansi, while Lariat's heart pounds at the blonde woman's incredible beauty.
A frantic, rhythmic shuffle sounding as the flustered Lariat stammers out a quick and nervous confirmation.
Lariat performs a deep, graceful curtsy amidst a shower of flower petals and a bright, magical glow.
The two women sit for tea, with the blonde lady taking charge of the elegant table settings.
Evangeline apologizes for the sudden invitation and asks Lariat if she was surprised by the quick summons.
Lariat sits stiffly with her hands in her lap, feeling nervous while facing the imposing blonde lady.
A soft, steady creak sounding as the blonde lady mentions her personal love for Darjeeling tea. Evangeline offers to pour the tea herself, prompting a shocked and frantic pardon from the overwhelmed Lariat.
Lariat waves her hands frantically, insisting she is fine and trying to decline the lady's personal service.
Evangeline stares at Lariat with a silent, intense gaze that makes the atmosphere in the room heavy.
Reaching for the golden teapot, Evangeline addresses Lady Ansi once more with a calm and steady voice.
Lady Claudius looks down with a cold expression, asking her guest if she is always this irritating. A soft, sharp gasp sounding as Lariat is taken aback by the blonde woman's blunt and frosty question.
Lariat panics over her letter while the blonde lady offers to personally pour tea since she isn't drinking.
A soft, metallic click sounding as Evangeline pours the tea, remarking that it isn't a difficult task at all.
The blonde lady pours the tea with practiced grace, the liquid flowing steadily into the delicate porcelain cup.
A soft, metallic click sounding as the blonde lady encourages Lariat to drink and taste the madeleines provided.
A soft, rhythmic swish sounding as a plate with a chocolate-dipped madeleine is placed next to the tea.
Lariat stares blankly, her pink eyes wide as she processes the unexpected personal service from the imposing lady.
Lariat reflects on her habit of acting subservient, recalling her life spent walking on eggshells around the green-haired Serafina. A soft, metallic click sounding as Lariat reaches out and tentatively picks up the gold-rimmed porcelain teacup. A soft, steady sip sounding as Lariat tastes the high-quality tea, her eyes closed in brief and quiet appreciation.
Sparkles fill the air as Lariat beams at the lady, complimenting the truly excellent and high-quality tea.
A soft, quick blink sounding as the blonde lady stares back at Lariat with a stunned and speechless expression.
In a chibi-style display, a flustered Evangeline claims she merely prepared the best quality variety available for them. A soft, piteous groan sounding as Lariat observes that the blonde woman seems far kinder than any villainess should.
A soft, steady sip sounding as Laureate considers the injustice of the lady being imprisoned due to Serafina's rumors.
Laureate realizes that Serafina's rumors are the true catalyst for the forced plot and the lady's supposed evil deeds. A soft, muffled gulp sounding as Laureate eats a madeleine, frustrated by the unfairness of the protagonist's secret manipulations.
A soft metallic click sounding as the teacup is set down, and Evangeline addresses Lady Ansi once more.
Evangeline confirms her previous statement, prompting an excited and energetic confirmation from the tiny, chibi-style Laureate. The blonde lady's blue eyes narrow with intense curiosity as she asks Laureate to explain her proposed method.
Laureate looks surprised, privately reflecting that her drunken plan from the previous night no longer feels like a fantasy.
A soft, mischievous grin sounding as Laureate's resolve strengthens, feeling her absurd idea is finally becoming a reality.
Laureate excitedly proposes they become friends to break free from the narrative constraints placed upon supporting characters together.
The blonde lady Claudia stares in complete disbelief, blinking rapidly as she repeats the word friends in confusion.
Laureate continues to smile brightly while the blonde lady considers the strange idea of facing a common enemy together.
A sudden, sharp startle sounding as Laureate asks for permission to discuss the rumors circulating about the blonde lady.
A soft, rhythmic flick sounding as Evangeline crosses her arms and looks away, telling Laureate to do as she wishes.
Laureate realizes the haughty lady is actually bothered by the rumors and begins to recount the honest gossip of society.
A sudden loud hiss sounding as Laureate lists the rumors of arrogance, causing a chibi Evangeline to scream denial. A soft, rhythmic pause sounding as Laureate watches the lady try to regulate her emotions to save her dignity. Evangeline dismisses her outburst while Laureate privately notes that the lady acts more like a friendly cap than a villainess.
Reflecting in her tea, Laureate explains that making a friend and being seen together will recover the lady's reputation.
She envisions them together at a ball, proving the lady is approachable even to lower-ranking nobles like herself. A sudden, sharp twitch sounding as Laureate suggests that the blonde lady is actually being victimized by Serafina's rumors.
A sudden, loud bang sounding as the blonde lady slams her fist onto the table in fierce and total agreement. Evangeline stands up furiously, ranting about Serafina's manipulation and asking if Laureate was also forced into annoying tasks. A sudden, energetic clap sounding as Laureate agrees, confirming she was also suffering under the green-haired girl's schemes.
A sudden, sharp piercing sounding as Evangeline bluntly remarks that Laureate spent too much time following Serafina's shadow. A sudden, heavy thud sounding as Laureate feels crushed by the lady's harsh but accurate assessment of her past weakness.
Regaining her composure, Evangeline asks if Laureate truly intends to stop associating with the common enemy, Lady Lopez.
Laureate's pink eye glares with cold determination as she vows never to be friendly with Serafina in the future. She explains that her presence by the lady's side will cause society to speculate about why she abandoned Serafina.
Laureate looks forward with resolve, stating that chipping away at Serafina's influence will eventually cause the girl to slip.
The blonde lady Claudius remains silent, looking thoughtful as she carefully considers the merits of Laureate's proposed strategy.
A sudden, sharp thump sounding as Evangeline clenches her skirt, admitting that the plan is not a bad strategy.
A soft, steady click-clack sounding as the lady walks to the window, questioning if this is truly their first meeting.
A soft, rhythmic standstill sounding as the lady admits she still lacks the conviction to move with Laureate.
Evangeline turns around with a skeptical gaze, asking if Laureate really cut ties with the girl she was entangled with.
Laureate observes the lady's wariness, realizing that such a suspicious reaction is only natural given their shared history.
Laureate remains silent as the blonde lady waits for her next words.
Laureate worries that the blonde lady might view her as another malicious trap.
A soft, steady rustle sounding as Laureate leans forward, reassuring the lady not to worry.
Laureate declares her intent to cut all ties with the green-haired girl immediately.
Laureate extends her hand, a magical glow emphasizing her sincere and bold proposal. A soft, steady exhale sounding as Evangeline repeats the word temporary in quiet contemplation.
Laureate clarifies her offer of friendship, looking directly at the stunned blonde lady.
A soft, rhythmic rumble sounding as a grand carriage rolls through the estate grounds.
A servant greets the arrival of the Duke, noting the unusually early hour. The golden-haired Duke Dietrich von Claudius mentions his state council meeting ended early.
A soft, sharp gasp sounding as Dietrich spots something unusual from his office window. Dietrich wonders who the unfamiliar young lady standing with his sister on the balcony is.
The blonde Duke watches the two women with an intense and curious gaze.
Evangeline reacts with surprise as the interaction on the balcony continues to unfold.
The Duke watches with a faint, enigmatic smile playing on his handsome features.
A credits page provides information about the translation team and the series' official site. A dark-haired woman laughs in a credits image celebrating the release of the chapter.
A soft, sharp twitch sounding as Evangeline notes Lauriette's sudden shift from self-deprecation to confidence.
Lauriette stands with her hand outstretched, beaming with a bright and hopeful expression. A sudden, sharp pause sounding as Evangeline slowly reaches toward Lauriette's waiting hand.
A soft rhythmic flick sounding as Evangeline asks for proof of Lauriette's desire to separate.
Lauriette observes that the lady's caution makes her the perfect ally against their common enemy.
A sudden, sharp step sounding as Lauriette turns back, ready to divulge her secrets.
A sudden, loud thud sounding as Lauriette places her hand down, preparing for a long explanation.
Lauriette sits with a satisfied smile, confident in her ability to win the lady over.
A sudden, loud clatter sounding as Evangeline reacts with total shock to Lauriette's revelations.
Evangeline is horrified to learn about the intentional tea spills and sabotaged shoelaces by Lady Lopez.
A sudden, sharp hiss sounding as Evangeline condemns the green-haired girl's truly malicious behavior.
Lauriette feigns a piteous sigh, explaining she sent the letter because of their shared plight.
Lauriette privately celebrates using her office bonding skills to unite against a common enemy. A sudden, loud clap sounding as a frantic Evangeline grabs Lauriette's hands in solidarity.
Evangeline fiercely advises Lauriette to never waste her time on such a person again.
A soft, rhythmic sigh sounding as Lauriette accepts the comfort but adds a strategic condition.
The two women remain hand in hand as their new alliance begins to solidify.
A soft, quick gasp sounding as a chibi Evangeline reacts with comical surprise. A sudden, loud snap sounding as a flustered Evangeline insists they are only temporary friends.
A soft, joyful giggle sounding as Lauriette expresses her happiness at being accepted.
Evangeline sighs, admitting her own impatience to fix the damage to her social reputation.
A soft, steady step sounding as Evangeline describes the pressure of rumors on her family.
A soft, steady exhale sounding as Evangeline explains that her dignity represents her entire house.
Lauriette is surprised to hear the Duke threaten to cut his sister's allowance over rumors.
Lauriette reflects on the original story's dark path where the sister is eventually shunned.
A soft, piteous groan sounding as Lauriette realizes she must carefully recall the original plot. A soft, rhythmic swish sounding as Evangeline considers the origins of her negative reputation.
A soft, sharp snort sounding as Evangeline admits her personality can be prickly and sensitive. Lauriette playfully scolds the lady, reminding her not to belittle herself as she advised earlier.
Lauriette gushes about falling for the lady's sweet personality and cool, admirable demeanor.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as a stunned Evangeline notes how everyone else avoids her. Lauriette asks to learn more about the lady's likes to celebrate their temporary friendship.
Evangeline looks away thoughtfully, softly repeating the request to share her personal interests.
Lauriette stands amidst blooming flowers, a gentle breeze rustling through her dark hair as she smiles softly.
The blonde lady's blunt critique of her attire catches Lauriette completely off guard, leaving her stuttering in defense of her chosen outfit. A wave of embarrassment hits Lauriette as she recalls the agonizing process of changing 10 times to find her brightest gown.
A soft, rhythmic click sounding as Evangeline's heels tap against the stone, the lady deciding that despite the fashion disaster, they will move forward.
Evangeline stands with a commanding presence, crossing her arms before gesturing for the flustered Lauriette to follow her lead. Looking back with a softened gaze, Evangeline invites Lauriette on a stroll, confessing a long-held desire for a garden walk with a peer.
Lauriette's eyes sparkle with pure joy, her excitement radiating as the unexpected invitation fills her with genuine delight.
A sudden, energetic grab sounding as Lauriette eagerly takes the lady's hand, her enthusiasm for their budding connection momentarily stunning Evangeline.
The golden light of the setting sun bathes the estate's gardens, marking the peaceful passage of hours spent in deep conversation.
As evening approaches, Lauriette expresses her gratitude, but a dinner invitation involving the Duke triggers a sudden internal alarm.
Panic flares in Lauriette's eyes as she realizes meeting the male lead, Seraphina's future partner, would be a disastrous complication.
Evangeline halts Lauriette's hasty retreat, her surprise evident as she remembers she has a specific parting gift to offer. Lauriette watches in confusion as the blonde lady prepares to retrieve the item, her curious gaze following the sister of the Duke. A soft, rhythmic click sounding as Evangeline ascends the stairs, her elegant silhouette disappearing back into the mansion.
A sudden, sharp pause sounding as the lady's hem settles, a silent moment of hesitation before she addresses the guest once more.
Standing alone in the fading light, Lauriette remains in the garden, waiting for her new friend's return with a thoughtful expression.
From the shadows, Evangeline's voice carries clearly, observing that Lauriette has spent the entire day listening without ever speaking of herself.
A soft, puzzled blink sounding as the tiny Lauriette tilts her head in confusion, unsure of how to respond to the lady's observation.
Evangeline turns back with a determined look, expressing a genuine frustration over her ignorance of Lauriette's personal tastes and desires.
The blonde lady insists they should prioritize Lauriette's interests, urging her to stop the habit of merely catering to the whims of others.
Overwhelmed by the unexpected consideration, Lauriette stares blankly, her pink eyes shimmering as the sincerity of the words sinks in.
A soft, steady step sounding as Evangeline moves to fetch the gift, leaving Lauriette to grapple with the profound kindness she just received. A soft, rhythmic thud sounding as Lauriette clutches her chest, her heart racing as she stands alone in the garden. Breathless and wide-eyed, Lauriette feels a surge of emotion, the lady's words echoing the first true respect she has felt in this life.
Lauriette reflects on the rarity of a relationship built on mutual consideration rather than being a tool for someone else's schemes.
A soft, sharp sniff sounding as a single tear escapes Lauriette's eye, her heart fluttering with a mix of relief and newfound affection. Tears begin to flow freely as Lauriette is moved to a weeping state by the small yet significant gesture of human decency. A soft, rhythmic rustle sounding as Lauriette frantically searches her person, scolding herself for crying while trying to locate a handkerchief. As she searches, a pair of polished boots appears before her, accompanied by the sound of a steady approach. A tall, blonde figure looms over the crying girl, offering a tentative question as he observes her emotional state.
The man is revealed as the stunning Duke Dietrich, standing bathed in a divine glow as he holds out a pristine white handkerchief. Lauriette's breath hitches in pure shock, her recognition of the man's identity sending a jolt of alarm through her system.
Lauriette recalls the original story's narrative, where the most intricate and flowery descriptions were always reserved for the main characters.
The green-haired protagonist, Serafina, appears in a vision of beauty, embodying the idealized image of the story's central heroine.
Evangeline is depicted in a similar light, the novel having spent even more time detailing the striking and haughty beauty of the Duke's sister.
A soft, rhythmic step sounding as the golden-haired Duke walks away, his presence commanding even from behind.
Narrative text confirms the man's identity as Dietrich, the powerful and handsome male lead of the entire story.
Lauriette is comically dazzled by the Duke's proximity, finding his legendary beauty even more overwhelming in person than she had imagined.
Dietrich offers the cloth with a calm gaze, prompting a frantic and flustered acceptance from the mesmerized Lauriette.
A sudden, energetic grab sounding as Lauriette takes the handkerchief, her hands trembling as she thanks the man for his assistance. Blushing deeply, Lauriette offers a clumsy apology for her staring, fabricating a story about being worried for the estate's well-being.
Lauriette quickly pivots to praising Evangeline's kindness, her words coming out in a rush as she tries to hide her true emotions.
Dietrich's blue eyes widen in disbelief, his confusion evident as he questions the idea of anyone being genuinely moved by his sister.
Lauriette recognizes the skepticism, realizing the Duke has been blinded to his sister's true nature by the weight of toxic rumors.
A dark silhouette of the siblings serves as a grim reminder of their tragic fate in the original plot, brought on by mounting misunderstandings.
A soft, rhythmic step sounding as Lauriette's resolve hardens, determined to clear the lady's reputation even if she must confront the Duke directly. Lauriette looks up at the towering man, preparing to recount the genuine acts of friendship his sister performed throughout the day. She excitedly details the salon recommendation and the tea pouring, hoping to convince the Duke of Evangeline's hidden sweetness.
Lauriette concludes her passionate defense, highlighting the lady's attentive listening and rare empathy as proof of her character.
A sudden, soft chuckle sounding as Dietrich breaks into a smile, finding the description of his sister's cute behavior unexpectedly charming.
Dietrich observes uncharacteristic behavior, noting that his sister seems to have taken a liking to Lauriette.
A chibi Lauriette is stunned to realize the Duke genuinely trusts his younger sister.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Lauriette is shocked by the Duke's perception of his sister's personality.
Lauriette is mortified by her overreaction, while Dietrich watches her with a serene, knowing expression. Dietrich remarks that a man should not intrude on a gathering meant for ladies.
A soft, polite bow sounding as the blonde Duke promises to offer a proper greeting later. A soft, rhythmic step sounding as the Duke walks away, leaving the girl alone.
Lauriette finds the Duke's handsome face healing after dealing with less attractive people like Gregory.
A soft, puzzled hum sounding as Lauriette is momentarily distracted by a sudden thought.
Lauriette suddenly remembers the handkerchief the Duke provided during her emotional moment in the garden. A soft, steady step sounding as Evangeline returns, carrying a basket of vibrant red roses.
Lariat gushes over the beautiful flowers, feeling incredibly lucky to receive such a thoughtful gift.
Evangeline dismisses her own effort, claiming the premium flowers will simply look nice in the room.
A sudden sharp turn sounding as the blonde lady looks back with a serious, intense gaze. Evangeline impulsively declares she will pick Lariat up tomorrow morning, leaving the girl completely bewildered. Lariat is struck by the lady's harsh opinion of her clothes, her confidence visibly wavering.
Evangeline tells Lariat not to feel down, explaining she intends to buy her new clothes.
A sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Lariat wonders if the lady is asking her on a date.
A soft, rhythmic click sounding as Lariat agrees, determined to stay positive despite the fashion critique.
Radiant and full of joy, Lariat beams while clutching her new basket of flowers. Evangeline watches the dark-haired girl with a soft, curious expression as the day finally ends.
A soft, rhythmic tap sounding as Lariat waves from the carriage window, wishing the lady well. A sudden, loud rattle sounding as the carriage departs, Lariat's farewell echoing through the estate.
A soft, silent pause sounding as Evangeline stands frozen, processing Lariat's affectionate and dramatic parting.
A sudden, soft chuckle sounding as a genuine smile breaks across the blonde lady's face.
Evangeline laughs softly to herself, finding the day's unexpected friendship and the girl's energy amusing.
The scene transitions to a lavish dinner setting beneath the warm glow of a chandelier.
Dietrich and Evangeline share a meal in a grand, ornate dining hall during the quiet evening.
Dietrich inquires about the new friend his sister made today, his tone casual yet observant. A sudden, sharp huff sounding as Evangeline dismisses the topic, telling her brother he wouldn't understand. A sudden, loud laugh sounding as Dietrich notes that someone finally managed to make his sister laugh.
Dietrich reflects on his sister's uncharacteristic laughter, wondering if the sender of the letter is responsible.
Dietrich confirms the girl is from the Ansi family while his sister listens with quiet interest.
Dietrich notes that Lady Ansi is reportedly close with Lady Lopez, whom his sister famously dislikes.
Evangeline surprises her brother by admitting that Lady Ansi was actually quite a decent person. A sudden, sharp slam sounding as a flustered chibi Evangeline reacts with intense embarrassment.
Dietrich smiles warmly, clearly enjoying the rare sight of his sister being moved by someone else.
A soft, sharp hiss sounding as the blonde lady grumbles about how annoying her brother is. A soft, rhythmic swirl sounding as Evangeline prepares to address a more important matter with Dietrich.
Evangeline points out the awkwardness of asking her guests to pay for their planned shopping trip.
Dietrich listens with an amused expression as his sister tries to justify her upcoming request.
A soft, joyful chuckle sounding as Dietrich decides to observe his sister's behavior before agreeing.
A sudden loud clatter sounding as Evangeline reacts with frustration to her brother's petty conditions.
A soft, sharp tease sounding as the blonde lady sticks out her tongue in childish defiance. A sudden, loud shout sounding as a flustered Evangeline expresses her intense annoyance with her brother. A soft, steady wave sounding as Dietrich smiles, enjoying the lively exchange during their dinner.
Dietrich reflects on the significance of his sister's swallowing her pride to make such a request.
Lariat appears in a soft, ethereal frame, her expression one of quiet, blushing contemplation.
A soft, rhythmic swirl sounding as the scene focuses on the Duke's elegant hands and glass.
The sun rises over the Ansi townhouse, marking the start of a new, eventful morning. A pink carriage sits waiting on the cobblestones as the morning sun begins to shine. A confused Lariat questions why Lady Claudius has arrived so early for their planned morning appointment. Lariat is shocked to find the lady waiting at 9 o'clock sharp for their shopping trip.
Evangeline stands with her back turned, looking away from the girl with a slightly flustered expression.
The blonde lady maintains her haughty demeanor despite the awkwardness of her unexpectedly early morning arrival. Lariat worries that arriving early was tiring, but Evangeline loudly denies feeling any exhaustion at all. Turning back with a deep blush, the blonde lady demands that Lariat stop making such presumptions.
Lariat is startled by the lady's intense reaction, imagining her as a temperamental and defensive cat.
Realizing the lady was simply excited for their outing, Lariat feels a sudden surge of affection. Lariat suggests departing with anticipation, while Evangeline stubbornly insists she was not excited about the trip. Inside the carriage, Lariat playfully agrees with the lady's claims to soothe her visible embarrassment.
Evangeline questions if she is actually being believed, and Lariat promises to trust her every word.
The carriage arrives at a grand, upscale boutique as their eventful shopping trip officially begins. A hand points toward the racks, indicating they will browse the entire collection from beginning to end.
Evangeline selects a dress while Lariat watches, initially unsure of whose clothes are being chosen today.
Lariat assumes the lady is shopping for herself first after seeing the many beautiful outfits displayed.
Lariat admires the beautiful garments, and Evangeline haughtily agrees that the quality is indeed excellent.
a sudden, sharp gasp sounding as Laureate touches the fine fabric of a potential dress choice. Evangeline places a hand on Laureate's shoulder, calling her name to get her full attention. Looking like a ferocious tiger, Evangeline asks if Laureate forgot they are shopping for her clothes.
Laureate frantically tries to decline the offer, insisting that she doesn't need such a large wardrobe.
Firmly grabbing the girl's collar, Evangeline explains that this shopping trip is not just for her.
The blonde lady looks determined to give Laureate a complete and high-quality fashion makeover today.
A sudden, energetic yank sounding as Evangeline pulls the protesting girl toward the private dressing room.
Evangeline waits patiently on a sofa, leafing through a book while Laureate tries on various outfits. Evangeline looks up expectantly as the shopkeeper calls her name to present the final results. The madame announces that she has finalized several styling options specifically tailored for Lady Ansi's appearance.
The first option features a white dress with a scarf and designer earrings as elegant accents.
The second ensemble focuses on a spring-inspired dress complemented by a designer white mini bag.
A third option showcases a yellow ribbon-themed dress with matching limited edition floral hair accessories.
Finally, a pink dress is presented, carefully chosen to perfectly match the color of Laureate's eyes.
Evangeline approves of the look and orders the boutique to send everything to the Duke's townhouse. The shopkeeper bows politely and confirms that the luxury items will be prepared for delivery immediately. Evangeline instructs Laureate to look in the mirror to see her own striking and beautiful transformation.
The lady asks if Laureate finally understands how beautiful she looks when she is properly dressed.
Laureate is breathless, admiring her reflection and realizing she looks much more presentable than she imagined.
Panic sets in as Laureate worriedly wonders whether her personal funds can cover such expensive purchases.
A soft, hesitant tap sounding as Laureate tries to catch the shopkeeper's attention for a question.
Laureate asks for a payment plan, but a dark aura looms as Evangeline calls her name.
Exploding like a tiger, Evangeline yells that she never expected Laureate to pay for these dresses.
Evangeline tells the girl to stop groveling and bills all the purchases to the Duke's household.
Leaving the shop, Evangeline satisfiedly notes that she has dressed the girl to her specific taste.
Standing by the door, Evangeline invites Laureate to move on to their next planned destination together.
Laureate wonders what the next step of their extravagant and surprising day together will be.
Evangeline announces their plan to have lunch at an excellent and high-end local brunch location.
Laureate follows the blonde lady, her mind still reeling from the unexpected and extremely generous gift.
A soft, rhythmic click sounding as Laureate's new shoes step onto the stone walkway outside.
Laureate calls out for the lady to wait as she hurries after her in the garden.
The scene shifts to the elegant exterior of a restaurant surrounded by bright, warm morning sunlight.
A sudden, soft murmur sounding as they enter the busy dining hall filled with other guests.
Entering the atmospheric restaurant, Laureate is impressed while Evangeline assures her of the quality.
Evangeline leaves to fix her makeup, telling Laureate to wait and order anything.
A sudden, loud clatter sounding as Laureate takes her seat by the window.
Laureate waits alone at the table, clutching her menu and her new pink bag.
A sudden, sharp whish sounding as Laureate turns her head to look behind her.
The restaurant is filled with the low, soft hum of chatter sounding from the guests.
Nearby, Lady Lopez and Viscount Gusto enjoy a meal together in the busy hall.
Laureate feels a sudden, sharp sting sounding as she looks down at her menu.
Determined to make a good impression, Laureate carefully considers what meal to order. A sudden, sharp flinch sounding as Serafina approaches the table, surprised to find Laureate. The air is filled with the low, soft murmur sounding from the surrounding tables.
Laureate's hope for a happy day vanishes as trouble arrives in a green dress.
Serafina stands before Laureate, her tone dripping with disbelief at the girl's presence.
A soft, sharp slide sounding as Serafina inspects Laureate's expensive new outfit with curiosity.
Laureate explains that her old clothes felt inadequate, prompting her to upgrade her wardrobe.
A sudden, sharp twitch sounding as Serafina questions why Laureate isn't wearing her picks.
Laureate maintains her composure, explaining that new clothes were a necessary change for her. Serafina condescendingly suggests that Laureate might as well replace her entire wardrobe while she's shopping. A sudden, sharp whish sounding as Laureate reacts to the green-haired lady's mocking attitude.
Soft purple flowers bloom in the background, adding a touch of elegance to the scene.
Serafina looks on with a startled expression, caught off guard by the girl's transformation.
A sudden, sharp flinch sounding as Viscount Gusto notices Laureate and freezes in place.
Standing tall, Laureate looks radiant and sophisticated in her beautiful, ruffled pink gown. Gregor stares at Laureate's luxury items, stunned that she could afford such high-quality goods.
A soft, rhythmic footstep sounding as the brown-haired man walks toward the table.
A sudden, sharp stop sounding as Gregor looms over Laureate with a serious gaze.
Flustered and arrogant, Gregor asks if Laureate dressed up specifically to capture his attention.
A sudden, loud thud sounding as Lariat and Seraphina react with utter shock.
Lariat is speechless as Gregor makes a pathetic attempt to reconcile after ignoring her.
Lariat coldly tells Gregor to keep walking, insisting she has no interest in his company. A sudden, sharp flinch sounding as Gregor stops, baffled by the girl's blunt rejection.
Lariat dismisses Gregor's claim of being her fiancé, demanding he respect the breakup letter.
A sudden, sharp grab sounding as Gregor seizes Lariat's wrist to prevent her from leaving.
Losing his temper, Gregor demands that Lariat stop playing games and take his papers. Lariat struggles to get away while Gregor claims he destroyed her letter to force conversation. Gregor cruelly insults Lariat, questioning who else would ever want to marry someone like her.
A sudden sharp flinch sounding as Lariat reels from Gregor's hurtful and public outburst. The scene shatters like glass as the eyes of every guest turn toward the confrontation.
Low, soft whispers sounding from the crowd as they observe the unfolding drama with interest.
Lariat stands frozen, feeling humiliated as she realizes she has become a public spectacle. A vision of a peaceful tea party between the two friends appears in the girl's mind.
A soft, sharp squeeze sounding as Lariat laments her failure to have a peaceful day.
A soft, rhythmic tap sounding as Lady Claudius's elegant dress appears beside the arguing pair.
Evangeline steps in with a cold gaze, demanding that Viscount Gusto leave her friend alone.
A sudden, sharp flinch sounding as Gregor realizes the blonde lady is standing right there.
Seraphina is visibly shaken, realizing that Lady Claudius is the one accompanying Lariat.
A soft, rhythmic click sounding as Evangeline confirms the engagement is officially over.
Evangeline mocks Gregor's pathetic behavior, questioning if he has nothing better to do than stalk.
Evangeline orders Gregor to stay out of Lariat's sight and stop hanging around so pathetically. A sudden, loud thud sounding as Evangeline dismisses the Viscount to eat in peace.
Evangeline dismisses Gregor, who begins walking away while Seraphina watches from the background.
Evangeline looks serene and content after successfully resolving the tense public confrontation.
Lariat remains silent, processing the sudden and firm support from her new blonde friend.
The scene transitions to a peaceful arrangement of art supplies and a cherub statue. Narrative text explains that the lady is now hosting traditional events usually handled by duchesses. A sudden, sharp glance sounding as Seraphina looks back at Lariat with a bitter expression. Noting the pair hasn't left, Evangeline asks if they have any remaining business with them. A sudden, sharp turn sounding as Gregor leads Seraphina away with a polite but defeated farewell. Evangeline reassures Lariat that standing up for themselves will become a common occurrence from now on. A soft, rhythmic flip sounding as Evangeline admits she strategically timed their confrontation for maximum impact. A sudden, sharp flinch sounding as the ledger is examined closely for important event details. Surrounded by flowers, Lariat looks surprised and impressed by the lady's bold and calculated actions. Closing the book with a sharp top sounding, Evangeline calls the incident an intentional opportunity.
With a bright, cheerful smile sounding, Evangeline admits she found the entire encounter refreshing and fun.
Lariat is captivated by the blonde lady's confidence and her infectious, positive energy today.
Lariat promises to follow her lead, prompting the lady to tease her for copying her tastes.
Outside, a heavy, rhythmic step sounding as Seraphina wonders how to handle her failing plans.
Gregor panics about his title while the green-haired lady demands silence so she can think clearly.
Gregor immediately cowers, apologizing to Seraphina for his frantic and desperate outburst in the street. Biting her finger with a soft gnaw sounding, Seraphina realizes Lariat has a powerful new backer. A soft, rhythmic tap sounding as Seraphina obsessively considers Lariat's newfound support and confidence.
With a sharp clench sounding, Seraphina decides that she must take immediate action against Lariat.
A dark, oppressive aura surrounds the thought of needing another direct confrontation with the girl. A soft, rustling sound as Lariat reads a warm morning letter sent by the lady.
The letter expresses hope that Lariat discarded the poorly intended outfits previously chosen by Lady Lopez.
Evangeline's letter reminds Lariat of their friendship contract with a playful and slightly defensive tone.
Lariat giggles, finding the lady's inability to be honest about her genuine feelings quite adorable.
A soft, rhythmic flip sounding as Lariat continues reading the long and thoughtful letter.
Evangeline warns Lariat about the sun and teases her about her messy, ghost-like hair.
A soft, scratchy scritch sounding as Lariat begins writing a heartfelt reply to her new friend. Evangeline looks at her pen, waiting expectantly for a response regarding their next planned meeting. Lariat smiles warmly at the closing signature, identifying the blonde lady as her contract friend. A soft, deep sigh sounding as Lariat hugs the letter, feeling deeply cared for. Rolling across the bed with a joyful cheer sounding, Lariat celebrates her overwhelming happiness.
A soft, sharp slide sounding as Lariat considers the lady's busy schedule preparing for the salon.
Lariat wonders if she has been a distraction to the lady during such a busy time.
Sitting up with a sudden rustle sounding, Lariat decides she would be happy to assist her.
A soft, sharp slide sounding as a formal, sealed letter is picked up from the table.
Lariat stands elegantly by a vase of red roses, appearing remarkably sophisticated in her new dress.
Amy announces that everything is ready, and Lariat thanks the blue-haired maid for her help.
The maid hesitantly reports that Lady Lopez has arrived for an unannounced and unexpected visit.
Lariat is visibly annoyed, reminding Amy that she gave specific orders to turn Seraphina away.
Amy explains that Seraphina brought a companion who is currently waiting in the drawing room.
Lariat's expression freezes when she hears that the prominent Baroness Benturner has accompanied the visitor.
A sudden, sharp clink sounding as a teacup is set down with visible and cold disdain.
Baroness Benturner, dressed in green, sits stiffly while sipping tea and appearing very unimpressed.
Another sharp clink sounding as the Baroness complains that the quality of the tea is lacking.
Snapping her fan shut with a sharp crack sounding, the Baroness insults Lariat's hospitality in character. Seraphina plays the role of a victim, thanking her aunt for accompanying her to this meeting.
A frantic, rhythmic fanning sounding as the Baroness demands to lecture the ill-mannered girl immediately.
The brown-haired Baroness expresses outrage that Lariat would dare send her nephew an annulment letter.
Staring coldly, Lariat realizes Seraphina brought this woman to her house to harass her.
Lariat recalls her past misery, constantly being compared to Seraphina and belittled by the Baroness. Lariat knows Seraphina brought the Baroness specifically to exploit her fear and force a meeting.
A sharp click sounding as Lariat places her hand on the doorknob to enter the room.
Seeing her friend enter, the green-haired girl stands up excitedly to greet her.
Seraphina claims her aunt missed her, but Lariat coldly asks what she thinks she is doing.
Lariat stands firm, reminding Seraphina she was told not to come or bring unwanted guests.
A sudden, sharp flinch sounding as the green-haired girl begins to offer a faltering apology.
With a sharp rustle sounding, the Baroness interjects, demanding Lariat stop scolding Seraphina for Gregor's sake. The Baroness scolds Lariat, asking if she has no shame for publicly arguing with her fiancé.
A sharp click sounding as the Baroness demands Lariat be gentle like Seraphina, prompting a sharp retort.
Lariat suggests the Baroness engage Seraphina to Gregor instead, since she adores the girl so much. With a loud burst sounding, the Baroness calls Lariat insolent, while Seraphina demands an apology.
Lariat questions why Seraphina is flustered now after watching Gregor be more devoted to her for years.
Standing tall, Lariat explains that true friendship is based on mutual respect and genuine care.
Thinking of Evangeline, Lariat considers how a real friend actually asks what the other person likes.
Lariat tells Seraphina she is no longer afraid, noting that Seraphina never showed her true friendship.
With a heavy thud sounding, Seraphina is shocked as Lariat officially ends their friendship.
Seraphina fakes distress as the Baroness screams, accusing Lariat of being ungrateful to the one who saved her.
Faking a faint, Seraphina tells her aunt to calm down, claiming Lariat is only speaking out of anger.
With a soft sob sounding, Seraphina cries, telling Lariat she is sorry and tried her best.
Seraphina promises to try harder if her new friendship with Lady Claudius has caused a rift.
A sharp hiss sounding as Seraphina asks if Lariat truly trusts the infamous Lady Claudius.
A sudden sharp twitch sounding as Lariat turns, asking exactly what the girl means by that. Seraphina whispers that the lady is infamous for her personality and is always left alone.
A sharp grab sounding as Seraphina takes Lariat's hand, citing rumors about the lady's cruelty.
Seraphina suggests the lady only chose Lariat to mock her and will eventually discard her.
Seraphina asks to accompany Lariat to the salon so that she does not have to suffer alone.
Lariat stares blankly at the green-haired girl, finally understanding the true motive behind her visit.
Lariat realizes that Seraphina's entire performance was designed to secure an invitation to the salon.
A soft, sharp squeeze sounding as Lariat's hand is held tightly by the manipulative girl.
With a soft slide sounding, Lariat pulls away and addresses the girl with a sudden smile. Lariat beams radiantly, looking perfectly composed despite the dark warnings she just received.
With a sharp turn sounding, Lariat suggests that speaking well to the lady might be impossible. A sharp click sounding as Lariat walks away, claiming the lady would never favor a laughingstock.
Lariat looks back, noting she would be lucky just to avoid the lady's anger herself.
A sharp click sounding as Lariat suggests the Baroness is more capable of obtaining an invitation. Lariat maintains a pleasant smile as she prepares to leave the two women behind.
With a sharp gasp sounding, the Baroness fumes while Seraphina tries to keep her aunt calm.
A sudden, sharp stop sounding as the green-haired girl freezes at the sound of her name.
Lariat turns back with a beautiful smile, asking Seraphina to do that much for her sake.
Lariat walks away, leaving Seraphina standing in the growing shadows of the drawing room.
A sharp tug sounding as the green-haired girl grips her aunt's arm in frustration.
Surrounded by a dark aura, Seraphina creepily promises to try her best for Lariette.
Lariette looks back from the doorway, wishing them a safe trip as she closes the door.
With a sharp creak sounding, the door closes on Seraphina as Lariette thinks about her survival.
A peaceful morning dawns over the grand and elegant architecture of the Claudius estate. A soft rustle sounding as the hem of a white floral dress brushes against the grass.
Standing amidst blue roses, Lariette performs a graceful curtsy as she greets the Lady of Claudius.
Sitting at a lavish outdoor table, the blonde lady invites Lariette to sit since she visited in person.
Evangeline stares intensely at her guest, her blue eyes fixed with a sharp and unreadable expression.
Evangeline approves of Lariette's outfit but deducts points for her greeting, labeling the total score as mediocre.
Clearing her throat, the blonde lady reminds Lariette they are friends and do not need stiff formalities.
Lariette promises a more comfortable greeting next time, prompting the lady to ask her to stop being burdensome.
Evangeline offers lemon cake, promising to order different food immediately if Lariette does not enjoy the dessert. A soft, sharp poke sounding as a silver fork is pressed into the layered lemon cake.
Lariette eats happily, feeling her earlier stress wash away while enjoying leisure time with the blonde lady.
Lariette's red eyes widen as she observes her friend, a sudden thought crossing her mind during tea.
Lariette realizes the lady appears completely free and uninvolved in the urgent preparations for the upcoming salon.
Surrounded by white roses, the blonde lady sips her tea elegantly while looking out over the balcony.
Lariette asks if there is anything she can help with, causing the blonde lady to look confused.
Lariette mentions the 2-week deadline for the salon and repeats her sincere desire to assist the host.
Evangeline remains silent, her bright blue eyes reflecting a moment of quiet contemplation and hidden worry. Looking down at her cup, the blonde lady appears to be grappling with a heavy, unspoken thought.
Setting her cup down with a soft clink sounding, Evangeline says her brother will likely handle everything.
A soft, deep sigh sounding as the blonde lady rests her face in her hand, appearing weary.
The reflection in the tea reveals the blonde lady's internal distress and her lack of self-confidence.
Lariette watches her friend closely, correctly deducing that the lady is deeply worried about the busy Duke. The blonde Duke stands amidst golden roses, holding a letter while his heavy responsibilities weigh upon him.
Lariette considers the Duke's vast duties, including managing the duchy's people, vassals, businesses, and complex noble relations.
Lariette wonders how the Duke handles his insane schedule with a smile while reviewing a mountain of documents.
Lariette suggests the lady review the documents herself to ease her mind, offering her own personal assistance.
Lariette knows the lady must master paperwork to gain confidence and secure her position as a direct descendant.
A dark, foreboding aura surrounds a purple rose as Lariette considers the most important reason to help.
Lariette recalls how Seraphina manipulated others like puppets in the original story, leaving victims broken behind her. Surrounded by shattered glass, Lariette vows to prevent the blonde lady from being defeated by Seraphina again.
Lariette recalls a fraud incident from the original novel where a merchant guild swindled nobles with overpriced spices.
In the past, Lariette informed Seraphina of the truth, allowing the green-haired girl to take all the credit. Seraphina stands triumphantly among white lilies, her reputation skyrocketing after she discovered the merchant's fraudulent spice scheme. Shadowy hands point accusingly at the lady, who was branded as incompetent compared to Seraphina's fabricated achievements. Lariette reflects on how unfair the evaluation was, as the lady had simply received the spices as gifts. Hiding behind a white fan, Seraphina subtly whispered lies to incite public anger against the blonde lady.
Seraphina maliciously whispered that the lady was merely making excuses about the spices being a gift to hide her guilt.
Dark, floating particles surround the ominous thought that the future of the entire ducal house seemed bleak.
Evangeline looks hesitant, her hand hovering near her face as she considers the daunting task of administrative work.
A soft, sharp exhale sounding as the lady wonders if she can truly handle the tasks her brother managed.
Lariette is determined to flip the script on the truly incompetent one, agreeing to the plan with conviction.
Lariette looks up with a gentle smile, her eyes sparkling with the resolve to protect her new friend.
Evangeline looks back at Lariette, her expression softening as she realizes she is no longer alone.
A soft, sharp slide sounding as Lariette reaches out to begin working on the original salon documents.
Lariette recalls that in the original story, the lady was dismissed as a vain and incompetent noblewoman.
Lariette stands with her hand extended, appearing like a guardian ready to rewrite the blonde lady's future.
Both women stare intensely at a document, groaning together as they struggle to process the complex paperwork.
With a soft, heavy thud sounding, Evangeline collapses onto the desk while Lariat asks if she is exhausted.
A soft, sharp slide sounding as Lariat presents a specific document for them to check over together first.
Lariat suggests reducing the flower decorations, prompting a confused question about the reason from the blonde lady.
Using a diagram, Lariat explains that large vases can obstruct the view of the important salon artworks. Evangeline agrees with the logic, listening as Lariat suggests focusing on lighting instead of excessive floral arrangements.
A soft, scratchy scritch sounding as Lariat writes a request to increase the budget for the salon's lighting.
Evangeline watches with wide eyes as Lariat proposes a new administrative strategy.
Lariat presents another document, prompting a curious and intrigued reaction from the blonde lady.
Evangeline appears deeply moved by Lariat's competence and her sincere willingness to help. Lariat fumes by the window, criticizing the unfair rumors about her friend's alleged ignorance.
A soft, sharp pot sounding as Lariat takes the lady's hands, offering permanent assistance.
Evangeline stands up excitedly, eager to confirm if Lariat will truly return for her.
Sitting back down, the blonde lady tries to act cool despite her visible embarrassment.
Lariat finds her friend's bashful reaction adorable and happily agrees to resume their work.
Lariat sits at the desk, focused on sorting the mountain of paperwork efficiently.
Evangeline works diligently alongside her guest, determined to master the salon's complex logistics.
Lariat carefully reviews a specific page, checking for any potential errors or hidden traps.
A sudden, sharp pause sounding as Lariat's eyes fix on a suspicious and important detail. A subtle, knowing smile spreads across Lariat's face as she confirms her clever suspicions. Lariat continues her work, confident that their efforts will ensure a peaceful upcoming salon. The scene shifts to night with the grand Claudius estate glowing under the starlight.
A soft, sharp tug sounding as the blonde duke adjusts his formal attire alone.
The exhausted duke exhales deeply, feeling the heavy weight of his endless ducal responsibilities.
The blonde-haired man requests a cup of coffee to sustain him through more paperwork. Walking toward the study, the duke is surprised to learn the documents were handled.
A sudden, sharp stop sounding as the servant pauses to provide more surprising details.
The duke looks genuinely stunned to fear that his sister managed the salon work. The study door stands slightly ajar, revealing a warm glow from within the quiet room. Entering the room, the duke finds the previously chaotic documents perfectly and neatly organized. The duke stares intently at the paperwork, his blue eyes filled with silent wonder. The duke notes the impressive level of detail and professional advice found in the notes.
He realizes that his sister could not have achieved this without some experienced help.
The duke finds Evangeline fast asleep at the desk amidst the beautiful floral surroundings.
The blonde man watches his sister with a soft, contemplative expression of immense relief.
The servant clarifies that Lady Ansi assisted the lady during her visit earlier today. A soft, heavy lift sounding as the duke carefully picks up his sleeping sister. The brown-haired servant bows respectfully, acknowledging the duke's command to assist the sleeping lady. A soft, heavy thud sounding as the duke gently places Evangeline onto the comfortable sofa. With a soft, gentle stroke sounding, the duke tenderly pats his sister's blonde hair.
The duke stands over his sister, his expression softening with newfound pride and gratitude.
Looking toward the window, the duke considers the positive impact of Lariat's unexpected intervention. A soft, sharp slide sounding as the duke retrieves the sorted and finished salon folders. A soft, sharp creak sounding as the duke cancels his coffee order for the night.
The duke feels immense relief, realizing Lariat's help allows him to sleep early too.
A soft, sharp blink sounding as Evangeline wakes up in her own large bed.
The blonde lady looks around the room, confused about how she got to bed.
Evangeline's eyes widen as she realizes she must have been carried to bed while sleeping. A soft, sharp clink sounding as Gregor sits nearby, calmly pouring hot tea for her.
A soft, steady pour sounding as Gregor notes that his sister has finally awakened.
Evangeline is startled, her face flushing a deep red at the sight of her brother.
Gregor offers a morning greeting, asking if she personally reviewed the complex salon documents.
Overwhelmed with embarrassment, the blonde girl struggles to form any kind of coherent response.
A soft, sharp clink sounding as Gregor smiles while Evangeline groans in utter frustration. Gregor notes that her exhaustion was evident since she fell asleep right at the desk. Evangeline looks down sadly, mentioning how her brother is always so burdened with work.
A sudden, sharp stop sounding as Gregor pauses his tea to address her comment.
The blonde-haired duke looks forward with a serene and impeccably composed expression.
A soft, handsome smile graces the blonde man's face as he relaxes. Evangeline looks stunned, asking if her brother is truly being serious about his plan.
A soft, sharp click sounding as Evangeline doubts his promise to clear his schedule.
The duke laments his lack of trustworthiness while Evangeline expresses her deep skepticism.
The blonde lady gazes downward, feeling the heavy weight of her past social failures.
Evangeline recalls being ignored and isolated at crowded noble parties in her painful past.
The Duke offers a sincere apology, which Evangeline quickly and bluntly rejects. Evangeline refuses to attend with him, stating she has already committed to Lauriette.
A soft, sharp breath sounding as Gregor finds his sister's refusal quite a shame.
In a chibi moment, Evangeline questions if he truly approves of the documents. The blonde lady notes her brother's typical pickiness while acknowledging his rare praise. Surprise flashes across the blonde girl's face as her brother remains uncharacteristically agreeable.
Evangeline glows with joy, exclaiming that Lauriette's help was truly amazing.
Gregor contemplates Lauriette's administrative competence and her role as a potential heir.
Lauriette stands elegantly in a pink dress, framed by an ornate and decorative border.
Holding his teacup, the Duke mentions his need to return to his duties.
Evangeline tells him to wait, urging him to eat breakfast before working more.
A soft, sharp tap sounding as the blonde man wishes his sister well.
A soft, sharp click sounding as Gregor's reflection stares back from his tea. A soft, heavy sigh sounding as the exhausted Duke rests his hand on his head.
Evangeline reviews the final salon paperwork by the window, appearing calm and focused.
A plate of pancakes and bacon sits ready on the table in the morning light.
Through various panels, Lauriette and Evangeline are shown working hard to prepare the salon.
Dressed in a beautiful blue gown, Lauriette arrives at the salon with newfound confidence.
A formal message notes that significant and important information was input during the process.
Chibi Lauriette focuses intensely, perhaps praying for the success of their careful plan.
The grand, well-lit ballroom of the estate is filled with elegance and arriving guests.
Lauriette notes that all the famous figures of the Empire have gathered today. An elegant noblewoman enjoys her wine while quietly admiring the gallery's art.
Noblemen gather in the background, their conversations filling the air with a lively hum. Narrative bubbles explain that Serafina's previous interest was purely about social ladder climbing. Lauriette stands poised amidst blue flowers, the epitome of high society grace. The black-haired girl remains puzzled by the logic of spreading rumors about the host. A sudden, bright shout sounding as Evangeline excitedly welcomes Lauriette to the event. Evangeline chatters enthusiastically about the salon's success, her face flushed with pride.
Lauriette smiles warmly, realizing the positive reception is why the lady is so affectionate.
A sudden, sharp turn sounding as the embarrassed blonde lady tries to regain her dignity.
Lauriette finds her friend's bashful reaction adorable, praising her natural and overflowing composure.
The intricate pearl and lace details of Evangeline's white gown are shown in close-up.
Narrated thoughts describe how the lady looks exceptionally beautiful and radiant today.
Evangeline is described as a work of art that outshines the sculptures on display.
Chibi Lauriette gives her friend a 5-star rating, feeling immensely proud of her.
Evangeline turns to her guest, eagerly asking for her honest opinion on the salon.
Chibi Lauriette admits she was just admiring the planning and finally seeing the works.
A soft, proud shrug sounding as the blonde lady basks in Lauriette's genuine praise. Evangeline suggests they view the magnificent sculptures first, leading her friend away. A man's formal suit, decorated with a large brooch and medals, is shown.
Evangeline's expression shifts to one of utter shock at the sight of her brother.
Duke Gregor stands among white flowers, announcing his arrival to the two women.
Evangeline leans in close while Lauriette looks shocked by her friend's sudden proximity.
Lauriette introduces herself as Lauriette Ansi, the lady's friend, to the blonde man.
The delicate floral and pearl details of Lauriette's gown catch the light.
Duke Gregor watches the interaction with a calm and serene expression. Lauriette worries about the awkwardness of meeting her friend's future marriage match.
A soft, polite bow follows as the black-haired girl greets the Duke properly.
Lauriette wonders when she should return the handkerchief she previously borrowed from him.
Evangeline stands between them, preparing to step away from her guest for a moment. Evangeline asks the blonde man to look after Lady Ansi while she is gone. Gregor agrees, and a soft, sharp tap sounding marks Evangeline's departure from the room.
Panicking, Lauriette asks when she will return, and Evangeline promises to be back shortly.
Left alone with the Duke, Lauriette feels the situation is an absolute disaster.
A close-up reveals the Duke's intense blue eyes fixed directly on the black-haired girl. Gregor asks if she is feeling all right amidst the bustling atmosphere of the salon.
Lauriette wonders if the Duke overheard the frantic things she just said to his sister. Stuttering, Lauriette admits to being a bit nervous about her first time at a salon.
A sudden, sharp slip sounding occurs as Lauriette loses her footing and begins to fall.
A hand reaches out instantly to stabilize the falling and surprised black-haired girl.
A soft, heavy catch sounding as the Duke pulls Lauriette into a firm embrace.
Lauriette finds herself staring directly into Gregor's face as he holds her steady. She is overwhelmed by his proximity, finding him so dazzling that she cannot look away.
Lariat springs back, insisting she has a healthy constitution and merely lost her footing. Gregor watches the flustered girl, thinking she looks exactly like a frightened rabbit.
Lariat regrets her outburst, recalling how much she prepared to converse with high-ranking nobles.
In a chibi moment, she laments her inability to hide her clumsy side from him.
The two stand together, a large wine glass framing their elegant silhouettes in the gallery.
A soft, steady voice sounding as Gregor calls out to the black-haired girl again.
The blonde duke extends his hand toward Lariat in a formal and inviting gesture. Gregor promises she will be able to tour the salon without missing a single detail. Gregor formally asks if they should look around the gallery together. A soft, firm link sounding as Lariat takes the duke's offered arm. A low, steady hum sounding as the crowd's chatter fills the grand ballroom. Guests admire the various paintings and portraits displayed across the estate's decorated walls. Lariat observes the professional lighting and the helpful brochures provided in every section.
A soft, proud chuckle sounding as Lariat realizes her friend did a truly great job.
Lariat explores the gallery, her eyes darting between the artwork and the room's arrangement.
Gregor notes that she seems to be looking at the salon's layout more than the art.
Lariat explains she is simply impressed by the taste and hard work Evangeline displayed. A soft, sharp blink sounding as Gregor looks surprised by her praise for his sister.
Gregor admits he was worried his sister might have been bothering Lariat lately.
Lariat laughs brightly, assuring him that the lady's company is not a bother at all. A sudden, quiet pause sounding as the Duke stares at Lariat's genuine and radiant smile.
A soft, handsome smile graces Gregor's face as he looks at her with newfound warmth.
Gregor notes that his sister has become much brighter and more confident since meeting Lariat.
From a distance, they watch Evangeline confidently greeting and socializing with other noble ladies.
Evangeline smiles radiantly, clearly thriving in her new role as the host of the salon. Gregor expresses his deep and sincere gratitude to Lariat for the impact she has made. Lariat looks back at him, her expression softening with genuine surprise and curiosity. A soft, heavy press sounding as the blonde duke touches his formal attire.
Lariat gazes upward, feeling a profound sense of connection in the quiet, floral moment.
Lariat expresses her sincere gratitude to the duke for his thoughtful and kind words. Changing the subject, she asks if he has noticed the impressive and striking statue nearby.
A soft, steady footstep sounding as Gregor approaches the large white stone sculpture.
Narrative bubbles describe a nymph who only obeyed a god she loved dearly. Suffering from unrequited love, the legend says the nymph eventually became a birch tree.
Lariat notes that the story is so famous that even she is familiar with it. Lariat believes the sculptor likely wanted to capture and emphasize the nymph's profound sorrow.
Narrative bubbles explain that the nymph gave everything only to be ignored and escape into sorrow.
Lariat stands quietly before the statue, her focus entirely on the tragic art piece.
Looking thoughtful, Lariat begins to offer a more personal interpretation of the famous legend.
Lariat admits she doesn't think the nymph's final transformation felt quite like overwhelming sadness.
A soft, steady footstep sounding as the Duke notes her differing opinion on the tale.
Lariat looks back at him, momentarily surprised by his sudden and close interest. Scratching her cheek nervously, Lariat wonders how to put her unconventional thoughts into words.
She wonders if the nymph truly felt only sadness when choosing to become a tree.
Memories depict Lariat's past of servitude and her very first independent and personal choice.
Lariat suggests that making such a choice might have left the nymph feeling free and relieved. She relates the nymph's story to her own decision to leave the protagonist, Seraphina.
Chibi Lariat panics, wondering if her strange interpretation of the legend was too unusual. Blushing and flustered, Lariat realizes she probably shouldn't have said those things aloud.
Duke Gregor gazes at the black-haired girl with a calm and surprisingly focused expression.
A soft, quiet whisper sounding as Gregor shares that his sister would love her interpretation. Leaning in close, Gregor tells her it's a personal secret that he shared this.
Lariat watches the Duke with wide eyes, surprised by his sudden warmth and intimacy.
The Duke stands tall with his back turned, his formal attire glowing in the light. Lariat is struck by the contradiction of a kind brother locking his sister away. Looking at him, she wonders what original story incident led to such a tragic ending.
Narration explains that the young lady and Seraphina meet in a peaceful lakeside garden.
In a flashback, a pleading girl begs for generosity and forgiveness for her unknown mistakes.
A soft, sharp footstep sounding as the villainess in a red gown approaches the girl.
Evangeline mocks Lady Lopez, calling her foolish for coming to find her like this.
A sudden, heavy splash sounding as Seraphina is shoved into the lake's deep waters. The Duke witnesses the act and dives into the water to rescue the drowning girl. A soft, sharp gasp sounding as the young lady is exiled to a distant convent. Lariat recalls how readers felt pity for the protagonist who ended up trapped underwater.
She reveals the readers were fooled as the girl acted to be lured into falling.
Gregor addresses her as Lady Ansi, snapping her attention back to the current conversation.
Surrounded by noble guests, the Duke mentions he should take his leave now.
Lariat offers a polite bow, promising she will see him next time, Your Grace.
Gregor smiles warmly at her, agreeing that they will meet again in the future. The blonde Duke begins to walk away, his silhouette bathed in a bright, ethereal light.
Lariat stands in profile, her gaze lingering on the Duke as he departs the ballroom.
A close-up shows the black-haired girl's face, her expression softened by a faint blush.
A soft, steady footstep sounding as the Duke walks away from the conversation once more. Lariat watches his departing silhouette, her mind spinning with a sudden and confusing question.
She wonders if his kindness means he actually sees her as a genuine friend.
Chibi Lariat is poked and scolded by the Love Squad for forgetting the plot.
Reasserting herself, Lariat declares that she values her current and safe position as well.
A soft, steady footstep sounding as her lace-covered dress trails along the polished floor.
Lariat walks confidently through the gallery, leaving the complicated interaction behind her.
Lariat stands nearby as two noble women whisper about her in the salon.
The guests discuss how radiant Lady Ansi looks and how the Duke escorted her.
A soft, sharp tap sounding as the women wonder why a high-ranking lady associates with a Viscount's child.
A soft, steady rustle sounding as Evangeline interrupts, stating that titles don't matter among friends.
Surprised by the hostess, the noblewomen nervously hope she is enjoying her own prepared salon.
A soft, polite bow sounding as the silver-haired lady apologizes for her rude remarks.
The women bow deeply, promising to ensure such gossip never happens again.
A soft, quick slide sounding as Evangeline addresses the guests with a calm authority.
Evangeline stands elegantly in her white gown, exuding the grace of a proper hostess.
The guests praise the exhibition hall's layout and credit the young lady's excellent eye. A soft, happy twitch sounding as Evangeline feels a surge of pride from their praise.
Evangeline clarifies that the salon's success is entirely thanks to her friend, Lady Ansi.
A soft, joyful chuckle sounding as Evangeline credits Lariat with helping her every step. The blonde lady turns away with a satisfied smile, leaving the guests in stunned silence.
A low, steady hum sounding as the two noblewomen stare in absolute disbelief.
The narration describes the guests' shock at seeing the young lady's radiant, angel-like smile.
A soft, quiet gulp sounding as Lariat enjoys a drink alone in the bustling gallery.
Evangeline approaches her friend, calling out to Lady Ansi to rejoin her side.
The blonde lady notes that the Duke has gone to mingle with other gentlemen. Chibi Evangeline fumes like an angry cat while Lariat insists his departure was considerate.
Evangeline vows to scold him later, but Lariat maintains he was a wonderful escort.
A soft, sharp pout sounding as Evangeline remains annoyed by her brother's lack of persistence. A soft, joyful giggle sounding as Lariat laughs at her friend's protective and fiery nature.
A soft, handsome chuckle sounding as Evangeline's irritation melts into a warm, genuine smile.
The grand salon continues as noble guests mingle under the brilliant ballroom lights.
Evangeline explains she publicly credited Lariat so the nobility would view her with respect.
A soft, heavy thud sounding as Lariat's heart swells with gratitude for her friend's kindness.
The blonde lady notices a letter and asks if it contains anything of importance.
Lariat smiles warmly, dismissing the letter as something that isn't particularly significant right now. She casually refers to the document as just some homework she needed to finish.
Night falls over the grand estate, casting the architecture in cool, moonlit blue tones. An envelope and a sharp letter opener rest on a desk in the quiet room.
Seraphina stands by the window at night, holding the message she received from Lariat. A soft, sharp crumple sounding as Seraphina's hand tightens around the letter addressed to her.
The text questions her false concern and lack of presence during Lariat's alleged harassment.
Staring into the night, the narration notes how hollow their friendship seems to Lariat.
The narration reveals Seraphina's true lack of worry, highlighting her deceptive nature toward her friend.
Lariat's thoughts declare her firm intention to never be used as a tool again.
A soft, sharp squeeze sounding as Seraphina crushes the final request to never cross paths.
A soft, heavy drop sounding as the ruined letter falls onto the dark wooden floor. A soft, sharp sniff sounding as Seraphina hunches over the windowsill in the dark.
A loud, sharp laugh sounding as the green-haired girl breaks into a terrifying, manic cackle.
Seraphina sneers at the letter, mocking the idea of being told to stay away.
A sudden, heavy slam sounding as Seraphina strikes the window, calling Lariat her lifelong maid.
Seraphina's eyes glow with a dark obsession as she claims Lariat belongs only to her. Thorny vines and dark blooms mirror the toxic and suffocating nature of Seraphina's possessiveness.
A soft, quiet clink sounding as the estate staff begins clearing the gala's remains.
A soft, weary sigh sounding as the long day of hosting finally comes to a close.
A soft, heavy slump sounding as Evangeline collapses in exhaustion while Lariat offers praise.
Resting against her friend, Evangeline sleepily asks what time it is as the night ends.
Lariat stands with her hand mirror as a soft metallic click sounding.
A soft, sharp thud sounding as Evangeline is shocked that Lariat is leaving, but Lariat insists a carriage will be fast.
Evangeline hesitates, her face blushing slightly as she searches for the right words.
Evangeline mentions a custom where friends stay up all night talking as a soft, quick tap sounding.
Lariat is touched by the idea of an all-night chat with a friend.
Evangeline turns away, her blonde hair cascading down her back as petals fall.
Gazing back over her shoulder, the blonde lady looks at Lariat with affection.
Chibi Lariat is overwhelmed by her friend's cuteness, feeling struck by a metaphorical, heart-piercing arrow.
Lariat jokes about a duke's daughter suggesting a pajama party while leaning on her friend.
Lariat asks to stay the night, and Evangeline agrees as a soft, firm squeeze sounding. Evangeline leads her away, promising to care for Lariat's tired legs as they walk.
Lariat giggles softly, delighted by the unexpected and heartwarming turn of the night.
Evangeline pauses, glancing back with a thoughtful look as she begins to say something.
Evangeline walks forward with a determined expression while Lariat follows close behind her.
Lariat smiles warmly, her heart skipping a beat at her friend's genuine kindness.
Evangeline enthusiastically plans to have Lariat model nightgowns while Lariat sighs at her predicament.
A hand places several playing cards onto the table as a soft, sharp snap sounding.
Evangeline celebrates her card victory while Lariat admits she is exhausted from their fashion show. Evangeline collapses happily onto the bed, surrounded by flowers and a joyous atmosphere.
Lariat sits on the bed and Evangeline tells her to make herself comfortable.
Evangeline suddenly asks Lariat if she is truly over her ex-fiancé, startling her. Chibi Lariat confirms that sending the annulment papers proves she no longer cares at all.
Evangeline asks if there is anyone else she likes as a soft, rhythmic flick sounding.
Evangeline rests her head on her hand, looking curious and a bit mischievous.
A close-up shows Lariat's pink eyes as she begins to think of someone.
Lariat recalls her intimate and secret conversation with the kind, blonde Duke Claudius.
Lariat watches the Duke walk away, remembering him as a man of elegance.
Chibi Lariat thinks about the only man who has ever treated her with kindness. Lariat claims she has no one, but Evangeline notes she gets along with Claudius.
A sudden, heavy spring sounding as Lariat panics, insisting she has no feelings for him.
Evangeline looks at her calmly, stating that she wouldn't mind if they were together.
Evangeline watches as Lariat and her brother share a warm and friendly moment.
Lariat smiles brightly, her face radiating joy as she thinks of her new life. Evangeline admits her brother is annoying but responsible and better looking than most men.
Evangeline concludes that of all the men she knows, her brother is likely the best. Moonlight streams through a window, illuminating the elegant and quiet interior of the mansion.
Lariat lies awake in the unfamiliar bed while Evangeline sleeps soundly beside her.
A soft, quick slide sounding as Lariat gently pulls back the covers to get up.
A soft, quiet breathing sounding as Lariat is glad to see her friend sleeping peacefully.
Lariat walks through the room, deciding she needs to get some fresh air.
Lariat stands on the balcony, looking over a garden filled with vibrant red roses. Gazing at the moonlit garden, Lariat remarks on how beautiful it looks at night.
A soft, steady breeze sounding as Lariat admires the gorgeous view of the roses. Lariat's ribbon suddenly detaches and flies away into the night as she gasps in surprise.
A soft, rhythmic flutter sounding as Lariat cries out that her ribbon is drifting away.
A hand suddenly catches the ribbon in the air as a soft, sharp catch sounding.
Lariat gasps in surprise as she sees someone standing nearby in the dark night.
The blonde Duke stands on his balcony, holding the stray ribbon in his hand.
The Duke and Lariat gaze at each other across the distance between moonlit balconies.
Smiling warmly at her, the blonde Duke asks Lariat if she was unable to sleep.
Lariat realizes with a start that the Duke's room is right next to hers. Feeling awkward after their recent conversation, Lariat asks Duke Claudius why he is working so late.
Duke Claudius stands elegantly on his moonlit balcony, adjusting the collar of his white shirt. The blonde Duke addresses Lariat with a polite and gentle tone as he looks her way. A soft, steady rustle sounding as the Duke mentions he has been wanting to ask her something. The two remain on their respective balconies, separated by the quiet and sparkling night air.
Duke Claudius smiles warmly and asks Lariat if she could spare a few moments for him.
Lariat looks back at him, her pink eyes wide with surprise at his sudden request.
The Duke asks for the true reason why she decided to send a letter to Evangeline. Lariat reflects on how his suspicion is natural given her rank and the timing of her message. Smiling softly, Lariat admits that she was simply in desperate need of a genuine new friend.
She recalls her past social circles, noting that her character differences made it impossible to fit in.
Duke Claudius asks if she is referring to her previous associations with Lady Lopez and Lord Gusto.
Lariat confirms that she has officially broken her engagement and severed all ties with those people.
The Duke is visibly surprised, his blue eyes widening at the news of her broken engagement.
Lariat leans over the railing, explaining that she felt her own solitude was mirrored in Evangeline.
She remembers how touched she was when the young lady was the only one to reply.
Lariat's expression is radiant with joy as she thinks of the bond she shares with her friend.
Duke Claudius watches her in silence, appearing thoughtful and perhaps a bit impressed by her sincerity.
The Duke smiles with a look of pure relief, glad to hear her side of the story. A soft, handsome chuckle sounding as the Duke admits he thought he alone cherished his sister.
A soft, quick blink sounding as Lariat is startled by the Duke's sudden and genuine laughter.
The Duke gazes down at her with a gentle and kind expression under the starry sky.
Chibi Lariat is completely overwhelmed, feeling as though she has glimpsed a rare, secret side of him.
Duke Claudius asks how she enjoyed the salon, and Lariat enthusiastically praises its beauty and success.
He explains that while he conducted the final review, Evangeline chose most of the art herself.
The Duke asks if his sister was difficult, and Lariat realizes how much he dotes on her. He confesses that he cannot help but worry since it was her first major responsibility. Lariat considers the heavy burdens he has carried as a young Duke while seeing him as overprotective.
She suggests he should rest, but he maintains that his heavy workload is just a daily routine.
Lariat insists that he must not overexert himself because his health is of the utmost importance. Duke Claudius smiles and returns the sentiment, telling her that her health matters just as much.
A soft, sharp freeze sounding as Lariat is momentarily stunned by the Duke's overwhelming charm.
The Duke suggests they both retire for the night and bids her a polite goodnight.
Lariat turns to go, but the Duke calls out her name once more to catch her attention.
A soft, gentle grasp sounding as the Duke holds the pink ribbon firmly in his hand.
He holds the ribbon to his chest, referring back to their previous conversation about the next meeting.
Lariat is left completely bewildered, wondering what the Duke could possibly mean by his cryptic words. A soft, quick twitch sounding as Lariat's hand trembles slightly from the unexpected tension.
She manages to respond, promising to greet him with proper decorum at their next encounter.
Lariat bows deeply and hurriedly, worried that she might misinterpret his surprisingly familiar and kind behavior.
A soft, weary sigh sounding as Lariat admits to herself that his familiarity makes her uneasy.
She recognizes that while he is a devoted brother, his presence brings a new set of worries.
Lariat imagines the Duke together with Seraphina, the woman she fears and wishes to avoid forever.
She realizes that becoming further entangled with him will inevitably lead her back to her enemy.
A soft, sharp gasp sounding as Lariat thinks about how a confrontation would hurt Evangeline.
She looks at the sleeping blonde girl, fearing the pain Seraphina would bring to her innocent friend.
A soft, quiet pot sounding as Lariat decides to stay close and protect her friend from schemes.
Lariat closes her eyes with a firm resolve, vowing to focus only on the young lady's happiness.
A bright, sparkly flash sounding as a gift box opens to reveal two beautifully decorated tea canisters.
Lariat wonders about the contents of the gift box she has just opened.
Evangeline explains the tea is a gift from the Duke, leaving Lariat stunned.
Lariat questions if such a gesture was necessary for a simple returned ribbon.
Evangeline approaches her friend with a knowing and mischievous sparkle in her eyes.
A playful chase ensues as Evangeline continues to tease a very flustered Lariat.
Evangeline notes her brother's rare lack of tact but claims to understand everything.
Evangeline tells Lariat to rest and promises to send another letter very soon. She laughs, teasing Lariat about her secret popularity with the high-ranking Duke.
A vigorous, rhythmic shake sounding as Lariat insistently denies her friend's teasing implications.
The air grows still as Lariat processes her friend's bold and unexpected words.
Chibi Lariat is plagued by memories of the Duke's charm while Evangeline watches.
Evangeline resolves to confront her brother just to see his usually calm face falter.
Duke Claudius reminds his sister that Lariat was instrumental in her salon's success.
A soft, sharp gasp sounding as Evangeline questions if they've shown enough gratitude. She stands tall, ready to debate the proper way to reward her new friend.
Evangeline reflects on the tailored dresses and private tours she has already provided.
A soft, sharp slam sounding as the Duke defends his thorough and considerate actions.
Evangeline points out this is his first gift to a lady, which he dismisses.
The Duke maintains that his sincerity is only natural given Lariat's significant help.
A soft, rhythmic scratch sounding as the Duke continues writing while ignoring his sister. Evangeline decides to prepare her own gift and requests the family lawyer's assistance. The Duke watches her depart, questioning why she needs legal counsel for a gift.
Evangeline looks back with a sly smile, mentioning a certain contract needs renewing.
She plays with her blonde hair, clearly satisfied with her mysterious and clever plan.
A soft, quick tremble sounding as a servant presents a confusing document to Lauriette.
Lauriette stares at the paper, convinced there has been a massive mistake in the text.
A soft, sharp tap sounding as Evangeline enters to challenge Lauriette's assessment.
Evangeline takes a seat, looking completely calm despite the chaos she has caused.
Lauriette points out a bizarre clause regarding maintenance expenses, but Evangeline remains unbothered.
Feeling completely lost, Lauriette looks to her friend for some sort of logical explanation.
Evangeline leans in with a look of pure, unadulterated joy at her own scheme.
She casually asks if she should make the generous payments even more frequent.
A soft, sudden hiccup sounding as Lauriette panics over the idea of such wealth.
Time passes quickly, and 4 days later, the scene shifts back to Lauriette's home. Evangeline arrives at the mansion door, accompanied by a formal and serious lawyer. Lauriette welcomes them, embarrassed that she hasn't prepared a proper reception for her guests.
A soft, quick swish sounding as Evangeline presents a bag of treats she brought.
Chibi Lauriette continues to apologize while Evangeline tells her to save the cake. Evangeline takes a seat and announces that today is a truly special occasion.
Lauriette tilts her head in confusion, wondering why this day is considered special.
A soft, sharp tap sounding as the lawyer formally addresses Lady Ancy.
Evangeline suggests that she would never visit with only a simple dessert in hand.
A bright, sparkly ta-da sounding as Evangeline presents her formal friendship contract.
Lauriette is deeply moved by the gesture, believing it to be a sweet, symbolic bond. A soft, heavy thud sounding as Lauriette reads the clause for a massive quarterly allowance. A loud, echoing scream sounding as Lauriette's shock travels through the entire mansion. Her hands tremble violently as she tries to comprehend the absurd amount of money. A soft, steady slide sounding as the document is placed upon the marble tabletop.
Lauriette questions the financial support, but Evangeline treats it as a non-negotiable fact. Evangeline insists that Lauriette needs a wardrobe powerful enough to make her enemies suffer.
Evangeline justifies her investment as a simple choice for someone she likes. A soft, sharp click sounding as she sets down a porcelain teacup. Lauriette explains her insistence is for their mutual reputation and the proper care of her domain.
A soft, sudden freeze sounding as the blonde girl pauses in mid-movement.
Evangeline clears her throat and corrects her statement to include Lauriette among those she cares for.
Evangeline dismisses Lauriette's concerns by citing the immense wealth of House Claudius. A soft, steady slide sounding as she pushes a document across the table.
Lauriette is deeply moved by the realization that she is the young lady's first true friend. A soft, quick thump sounding from her chest.
Lauriette takes the pen to finalize the agreement. A soft, rhythmic scratch sounding against the paper.
The blonde girl watches with bated breath as the final signatures are added.
Lauriette firmly commits to the bond, finishing her task with a flourished signature. A soft, rhythmic scratch sounding.
A soft, rhythmic scratch sounding as Lauriette completes the official document.
Lauriette proudly displays the paper, declaring it a formal contract of friendship.
Lauriette celebrates the official status of their bond while Evangeline finds her enthusiasm amusing. A soft, playful flutter sounding as the paper is waved.
Lauriette finds peace in the idea that the contract is a simple, joyous thing. The blonde girl watches Lauriette with a soft and affectionate expression.
Lauriette describes the contract as a knightly oath and a historical proof of their unique bond.
Lauriette laughs joyfully while Evangeline appears overwhelmed by her friend's immense kindness.
A soft, quick slide sounding as Evangeline leans forward to address her friend more seriously.
Evangeline proposes a celebratory outing while Lauriette panics about spending more maintenance money. A soft, rhythmic click sounding as a maid approaches.
Evangeline explains they are shopping for items other than clothing today. A soft, quick slide sounding as she handles an umbrella.
Evangeline insists Lauriette must demonstrate her eye for detail. A soft, rhythmic click sounding as she walks confidently away.
A soft, sharp tap sounding as Evangeline invites Lauriette to follow her.
Lauriette is delighted by the prospect of their next adventure together. A soft, sparkly bloom sounding.
Lauriette expresses her deep honor at the invitation.
The scene shifts to a refined shop filled with delicate porcelain and tea sets. A soft, sharp clink sounding as 2 elegant teacups are presented for inspection. Evangeline holds the teacups up, carefully evaluating their design.
Lauriette points out specific details while Evangeline continues her thorough examination.
Chibi Evangeline asserts that selecting the perfect tea set is a matter of great importance. Evangeline explains her new responsibility of managing the townhouse with her brother's official permission.
Lauriette reflects on the significance of the young lady taking charge of such important affairs.
Lariat offers practical advice on comparing prices between different merchant guilds for better value.
Lariat smiles warmly, confident that her friend already possesses a clear vision, a soft, quick pat sounding.
The two friends lock eyes in a moment of shared purpose and understanding.
Evangeline uses a charming and persuasive approach to request Lariat's expert assistance.
Lariat protests that an outsider like herself should not interfere in a dukedom's internal management, a soft, quick turn sounding.
Lariat repeats that the Duke has already granted his permission for the arrangement.
Evangeline clarifies that her brother's permission was specifically for Lariat to assist her.
A soft, quick tremor sounding as Lariat's hands shake at the mention of the Duke's involvement.
Lariat is filled with a sense of dread over the Duke's unexpected and far-reaching permission, a soft, sharp throb sounding. Chibi Lariat wails in confusion over the overwhelming trust placed in her, a loud, echoing wail sounding.
Chibi Duke Claudius feels his ears itch, wondering if he is being discussed, a soft, sudden twitch sounding.
Lariat continues to argue that involving an outsider in household affairs is inappropriate.
Evangeline rejects the label of outsider for a friend, while Lariat remains deeply hesitant. Evangeline highlights the limited scope of the budget and her desire to learn from Lariat, a soft, rhythmic click sounding.
A sequence of memories shows the two working together to prepare for the successful salon.
Evangeline smiles warmly, recalling the pride she felt in contributing her own effort, a soft, gentle bloom sounding.
Lariat is struck by the young lady's vulnerability and genuine sincerity. The blonde girl waits patiently for a final answer. Evangeline offers additional compensation, prompting a sudden reaction, a soft, rhythmic top sounding.
Lariat agrees to help immediately just to stop any further discussion of money. A soft, sudden grab sounding.
Blonde-haired Evangeline mentions that she is counting on Lady Ance's help once again.
Evangeline asks if they should begin with market research, while Lariat confirms she has a list prepared.
Evangeline lists furniture, wallpaper, and garden flowers as Lariat panics at the massive shopping plan.
Evangeline explains they are just browsing, prompting Lariat to note her friend's extreme excitement.
Lariat reflects on the Duke's astronomical wealth, but worries that Evangeline tends to splurge excessively.
A soft, rhythmic click sounding as Lariat resolves to correct her friend's habit immediately.
Lariat sternly reminds her friend that they are strictly browsing today as they enter a shop.
Time passes until the scene shifts to a vibrant flower shop several hours later. Lariat is physically overwhelmed, noting that her limbs are trembling from walking around so much.
Slumped over her umbrella, Lariat struggles through the final stop of their extensive shopping tour.
Lariat reflects on the cutlery inspections and wallpaper debates that broke her guard today.
Despite her fatigue, Lariat pauses when she notices an interesting display further inside the shop.
Evangeline continues to inspect the flowers while Lariat's focus drifts toward a different set of items.
Lariat tilts her head in curiosity as she approaches a glass case filled with elegant pens.
She admires a fountain pen, noting its exceptional beauty as it catches the light through the glass.
She wonders if the pen is meant for beautiful people and if the Duke uses one.
Recalling the Duke's thoughtful ribbon gift, Lariat's gaze lingers on the fine writing instruments. Duke Claudius is shown working diligently at his desk, focused entirely on his official paperwork.
A soft, quick whisper sounding as Evangeline startles Lariat by asking what she's viewing.
A soft, sudden bang sounding as Lariat screams in shock at her friend's arrival.
Evangeline offers to buy the pen, but Lariat explains it isn't for her own use.
Lariat blushes deeply, her attention captured by the beautiful item in the display case.
Evangeline watches her friend with a knowing and affectionate smile as she considers the situation.
Lariat mentions the gift of tea leaves he gave her during their previous encounter.
While looking at the pens, Lariat wonders if a gift without romantic feelings is suspicious.
Evangeline tells her to forget the gift if she's only trying to return a favor. Evangeline jokes that the pen would suit her brother and suggests Lariat should give it to him. She explains that the Duke rarely receives personal gifts because he is always working.
Lariat is surprised he doesn't receive gifts from other ladies despite his many admirers.
Evangeline notes that his reputation for ignoring gifts spread, so now ladies only send invitations.
She concludes that everyone is now satisfied with simply admiring him from a distance.
Lariat remembers the original story where the Duke only had eyes for Seraphina.
A soft, rhythmic rub sounding as Lariat considers giving the gift just to return his handkerchief.
A soft, quick thud sounding as Evangeline grabs Lariat's hand to urge her into buying the pen.
A soft, sudden swish sounding as Evangeline pushes her friend to hurry and buy the gift.
A soft, sudden bang sounding as Lariat holds the ornate, dark wooden box.
Lariat realizes she was ultimately pushed into making the purchase by her persistent friend.
She stares at the box, her expression filled with a mix of anxiety and quiet determination. Evangeline plans to feign ignorance until Lariat gives the gift to her mother. Lariat thanks the young lady for the escort while Evangeline promises a carriage for tomorrow. A soft, sudden click sounding as they say their goodbyes before the carriage departs.
A soft, playful flutter sounding as Lauriette waves goodbye outside the mansion.
Lauriette giggles to herself, feeling a secret sense of joy regarding her purchase.
She wonders if she will like it if she gives it to her before class tomorrow.
A soft, sudden rustle sounding as Lady Lopez appears from the dark garden bushes.
Lauriette is shocked by the arrival of the girl who previously demanded they never meet again.
A soft, heavy thud sounding as the expensive fountain pen box falls to the ground.
A soft, sudden grab sounding as Lady Lopez seizes Lauriette's arm with intense fury.
A soft, rhythmic scuff sounding as Lauriette is pulled away into the dark estate grounds. The servants are left behind in total confusion, wondering what could have made Lady Lopez so angry.
A servant's worried voice wonders aloud if the young lady will be truly all right.
Lauriette is bewildered by why someone so image-conscious would act so forcefully in front of witnesses.
Serafina demands to know when their bond broke, while Lauriette argues that rehashing the past won't fix their relationship.
A soft, heavy thud sounding as Serafina reacts with shock and takes an aggressive step forward. Serafina questions why she's being pushed away, reminding Lauriette of their past smiles and shared time together.
A sharp, sudden snap sounding as Serafina's composure breaks into a terrifying and manic outburst.
A sharp, sudden shriek sounding as Serafina rages about Lauriette's defiance after years of quiet compliance.
Serafina demands to know why Lauriette abandoned her side to serve the princess instead.
Serafina screams a possessive claim of ownership while Lauriette reels in shock at her friend's horrific words.
Lauriette watches in dread as the girl finally reveals her dark and twisted true colors.
Lauriette trembles as she realizes the original story is being warped into something unrecognizable and dangerous.